Chapter 1407. Why is there a fisherman here? Mo Ing sighed softly. In her opinion, under the pressure of a Mahayana patriarch, even the Dharma Daojun would be torn to pieces, let alone a fisherman. At this moment, on the small boat, the fisherman took off the green bamboo hat on his face, revealing an ordinary face. He was unshaven, and he did not care about his appearance. Right then, the patriarch of the Golden Crow race in the clouds attacked once more. A gigantic golden claw that burned with flames descended and grabbed toward Su Zimo. The fisherman's eyes were clear as he looked at the heavens with a fake smile and suddenly raised his hand. The green bamboo hat flew out of his hand and turned into a green beam of light that arrived on the golden claw in the blink of an eye and slashed horizontally. Exclamation point! Crimson blood gushed out and fell to the ground. Mo Ying's pupils constricted violently. She could clearly see that the golden claw that emitted a destructive aura in midair was severed by that inconspicuous green bamboo hat. Even though the gigantic claw was broken, it was still burning with flames and fell into the ocean. The entire ocean burned with raging flames for a long time. Groar! Above the firmament, a shrill cry of agony came. The cry was sharp and ear-piercing. Mo Ying's expression was pained as she hurriedly covered her ears. Thankfully, the cry disappeared as soon as it sounded. The Mahayana patriarch of the Golden Crow race had escaped. Mo Ying's eyes widened and she could not recover from her shock for a moment. She only felt that everything before her was like a dream. However, the sense of crisis that had originally surrounded her heart had indeed disappeared. Were they saved? She and her young master had actually survived the pursuit of the Golden Crow patriarch? Who was that fisherman? To be able to kill one of the Golden Crow patriarch's legs so easily, how terrifying was the fisherman's cultivation realm? Right then, Su Zimo had already retracted his true form and transformed into his human form, landing on the fisherman's boat with Mo Ing. Su Zimo was covered in injuries and was almost exhausted to be able to escape here. When he landed, he was unable to control his body and almost fell onto the boat. Normally speaking, with Su Zimo's body, not to mention a small boat, even the spirit boat of a cultivator could be easily smashed through. However, when Su Zimo fell on it, the boat did not move at all. The surface of the sea below the boat did not even have the slightest ripple. "Thank you, Senior," Su Zimo quickly said as he struggled to stand up. The fisherman smiled and waved his hand. A mysterious energy enveloped Su Zimo's body, and the pain on his body immediately lessened. Originally, the wounds on Su Zimo's body were all left behind by the Golden Crow tribe's ancestors' giant claw. Not only was the wound charred black, but there were also wisps of divine power remaining. Even with the Dragon Phoenix bloodline, it was extremely slow to heal. With a wave of his hand, the fisherman wiped away the remaining divine ability power on Su Zimo's wounds. The blood of the Dragon Phoenix surged and the wounds healed at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, more than half of Su Zimo's injuries were healed. "Lad, we meet again." The fisherman smiled at Su Zimo. Mo Ying's heart skipped a beat when she heard that and could not help but ask, "Young master, do you know the senior?" "We've met once." Su Zimo nodded. This fisherman was the person who had once guided Su Zimo in his saber technique and was known as the Smoky Wave Guest. Back at the seaside, this senior's whereabouts were mysterious and unfathomable. Su Zimo had deduced that the Smoky Wave Guest was definitely a peerless expert. However, he had not expected the Smoky Wave Guest's combat strength to be so terrifying that even the patriarch of the Golden Crow race had a leg severed with a single move and was forced to retreat in defeat. The Golden Crow race was one of the primordial 9 races, and their patriarch experts were comparable to emperors of the human race in combat strength. Back then, in a fit of rage, the red-headed ghost attacked and destroyed 2 super sects of the Buddhist monasteries. Furthermore, he caused the death of an emperor of the Buddhist monasteries. The terrifying combat strength of the patriarchs of the primordial races was clear. To be able to defeat a patriarch of the Golden Crow race with ease, could it be? A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind and he could not help but be shocked. He was truly curious and could not help but ask, "Senior, could you be a tribulation transcendence expert?" After the conjoint body realm was the Mahayana realm. After the Mahayana realm, there was the tribulation transcendence realm. Conjoint body experts were known as mighty figures. Mahayana experts were known as patriarchs. Su Zimo truly did not know what the titles of tribulation transcendence realm experts were. Even Imo Ing pricked her ears at the side and widened her eyes curiously, waiting for the fisherman's response. When he heard Su Zimo's question, the smoky wave guest laughed and shook his head. How can you have the chance to meet a tribulation transcendence expert? The smoky wave guest laughed. What do you mean? Su Zimo was slightly stunned. The smoky wave guest explained, actually, strictly speaking, tribulation transcendence is not considered a realm. After the Mahayana realm, cultivators will continue to improve their cultivation. When they cultivate to the perfected Mahayana realm, they will sense the heavenly tribulation. If they can transcend the heavenly tribulation, they will leave Tianhuang mainland and ascend to the upper world. There are very few people who can cultivate to the tribulation transcendence realm, and the process of the tribulation transcendence is even more dangerous. If they fail, their souls will dissipate and they will not enter reincarnation. If they succeed and ascend to the upper world, you naturally won't be able to see them. Su Zimo revealed a look of realization. It was no wonder why he had never heard of tribulation transcendence experts. It turned out that if one could transcend the heavenly tribulation, they would ascend to the upper world. When he heard the words upper world, Su Zimo's heart suddenly surged with anticipation. He suddenly felt that he was getting closer and closer to Daiyu. Initially, the distance between the two of them was still unreachable. However, up till this point of his cultivation, he had already begun to come into contact with some matters regarding the upper world. The smoky wave guest continued, at the Mahayana realm, they are known as patriarchs. They can only be called immortals after transcending the tribulation. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Back then, Daiyu had said something similar to him as well. There were no immortals in Tianhuang mainland. Su Zimo thought for a moment and asked, Senior, are you an emperor? The smoky wave guest smiled gently and did not deny it. Su Zimo asked again, what's the cultivation realm of an emperor? The smoky wave guest said, emperors are actually still at the Mahayana realm. However, there are strong and weak Mahayana patriarchs as well. Emperors are the strongest type of patriarch. When you enter the ancestor realm, you'll naturally know the difference between emperors and ordinary patriarchs. The smoky wave guest continued, it's not just patriarchs. Even emperors have differences in strength. Back in the primordial era, the human race rose and the emperors stood side by side in a dazzling manner. However, there were not many emperors of the human race in the ancient era who could fight against the patriarchs of the primordial 9 races. Those who could defeat the emperors of the primordial races were even rarer. Su Zimo nodded. Right now, the emperors that he knew that could fight against the emperors of the primordial races were none other than the Human Emperor, Fiend Emperor Hatred, Buddha Emperor and Thunder Emperor. Chapter 1408. The smoky wave guest said, back then, there were only 2 emperors of the human race who were the strongest, the Eternal Human Emperor and the Fiend Emperor Hatred. Even the Buddha, Thunder, Saber and Sword Emperors were ranked behind them. However, the Fiend Emperor Hatred's mental demons were too strong. He hated heaven and earth and his actions were unpredictable. In the end, he committed suicide. It was a pity. If not for the Eternal Human Emperor suppressing the emperors of the primordial 9 races, the human race would definitely not have won that battle. At the mention of the ancient war, the atmosphere on the boat suddenly turned heavy. If not for the fact that the ancient era's experts fought one after another in a bloodbath, how could the human race be as prosperous as it was today, and how could there be the dazzling cultivation civilization of today? Let's not talk about that anymore. The smoky wave guest waved his hand and sized up Su Zimo. You've changed quite a bit after a few years. Su Zimo replied, it's also a coincidence that happened by chance. Your cultivation is still too low. The smoky wave guest shook his head. In this generation, the 2 great taboos, Ho and Dragon Phoenix, have appeared one after another. The primordial races will definitely make a huge move. Although you have a taboo body, your cultivation is only at the conjoint body realm. You can't even resist against the patriarchs of the primordial races, let alone the emperors of the primordial races. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he asked, Senior, do you mean that the primordial races might start a war on Tianhuang mainland? It's not a possibility, it's a certainty, the smoky wave guest sighed gently. Initially, this war might have happened many years later. But now that the two taboos have appeared, the primordial races won't be able to sit still either. The human race has a long history and has many supersections. With so many years of foundation, can't we defeat the primordial races? Su Zimo frowned slightly. It's difficult, the smoky wave guest said. Without a peerless hero like the eternal human emperor, it's difficult for the human race to fight against the primordial races. It's still unknown who will rise and fall in Tianhuang mainland, the smoky wave guest said meaningfully. After pondering for a while, the smoky wave traveler said, You are the forbidden dragon phoenix. If you return to the dragons, you will definitely be protected by them. If you still care about your relationship with the human race, I hope that you dragons can join forces with the human race to fight against the other primordial races when the Great War comes. Senior, don't worry. Su Zimo nodded. In fact, Su Zimo had been preparing for this even without Smoky Wave Guest's reminder. Wu Dao's true body had sent the Kuan-Pring egg back to the Northern Ocean in hopes of borrowing the Kuan tribe's strength in the future. Senior, how is your combat power compared to the human emperors of the ancient times? Su Zimo asked again. In his opinion, being able to easily defeat an ancestor of the Golden Crow tribe, Yen Boku's combat strength was definitely top-notch among rulers. The smoky wave traveler smiled and shook his head. I'm far inferior to the eternal human emperor. The news of the Dragon Phoenix's descent will spread throughout Tianhuang mainland before long. Even Divine Phoenix Island won't be able to protect you. You have to head to Dragon Bone Valley. A hint of fear flashed through the smoky wave traveler's eyes. The emperor of the Golden Crow tribe is extremely strong. He's even stronger than the Golden Crow emperor of the primordial era. Only Dragon Bone Valley can protect you. Senior, you can't defeat him either? Su Zimo asked with a frown. It's hard to say. The smoky wave traveler shook his head. Furthermore, I've already sensed the heavenly tribulation. I don't have much time left in Tianhuang mainland. If I leave, Divine Phoenix Island will no longer have an emperor. If there's any danger, we can only rely on you. Don't worry, Senior, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. As the young master of Divine Phoenix Island, I'll definitely protect the living beings of Divine Phoenix Island with all my might. The smoky wave traveler said, I'll tear through space and teleport you to Dragon Bone Valley. You don't have to return to Divine Phoenix Island. The birth of the Dragon Phoenix would definitely cause a huge storm. Su Zimo could only survive if he hid in Dragon Bone Valley. The smoky wave traveler stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion in the air. It didn't seem like he was making any special movements. The void in front of him suddenly collapsed, revealing a dark and deep passageway with a sinister wind inside. He tore through space casually and formed a spatial tunnel. This was equivalent to summoning a major transference talisman. Just the casual means of an emperor was enough to shock one. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes slightly, seemingly shocked. Go on. The smoky wave traveler nodded slightly. Young master, I'll go with you too. Mo Ing said hurriedly. Su Zimo shook his head. No, that's Dragon Bone Valley. You're a human and it's inconvenient for you to enter. Don't worry, we'll meet again. With that said, Su Zimo leaped and entered the spatial tunnel. The smoky wave traveler retracted his palm and the void gradually healed. You should go back too. The smoky wave traveler waved at Mo Ing. Mo Ying's body floated towards Divine Phoenix Island uncontrollably and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The smoky wave traveler lay down again and smiled. A strange, sanguine glint flashed through the depths of his eyes. He picked up the green bamboo hat beside him and covered his face. Dragon Bone Valley. A huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky and Su Zimo's figure descended. Looking at the familiar surroundings and sensing the aura of the dragons, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, nothing went wrong. Smoky wave traveler, smoky wave traveler. Su Zimo murmured softly in deep thought. Who's there? After Su Zimo descended, he soon alarmed some patrolling dragons. Many dragons rushed over. You are, young master. When the dragons saw Su Zimo, they were stunned for a moment before they reacted quickly and exclaimed, Young master is still alive. The dragons cheered. During the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, while others did not know that Su Zimo was the young master of the dragons knew it clearly. When they heard that Su Zimo was exiled into the void, many dragons were dejected. Even Long Tsong, who possessed the bloodline of a five-clawed divine dragon, could not bring himself to be happy. Logically speaking, now that Su Zimo was dead, he should have successfully inherited the position of the young master of the dragons. However, in his heart, he would rather that Su Zimo was still alive. That way, he could continue to improve and have a goal to chase after. Long Mo had returned. This news spread rapidly throughout the Dragonbone Valley. Long Shi rushed over. The once hot-tempered tyrant dragon was now teary-eyed and laughing at the same time. Su Zimo even caught sight of Solitary Cloud. Solitary Cloud was wearing the scarlet robes of the Illumination Dragon lineage. It was clear that he had already joined the Illumination Dragon lineage. Su Zimo could clearly sense that the bloodline of the dragons in Solitary Cloud was extremely pure. This meant that Solitary Cloud had already broken free from the bloodline of a flood dragon and had completely transformed into a true dragon. Master! Solitary Cloud knelt before Su Zimo and kowtowed. Good, very good. Su Zimo nodded and waved his sleeves, helping Solitary Cloud up. In the Dao Inheritance Ground, Solitary Cloud had once risked his life to save him. Today, Su Zimo was happy to see that Solitary Cloud could transform into a true dragon and obtain an opportunity that belonged to him. Long Mo, it's great that you're not dead. Ha! Right then, Long Tsong's hearty laughter sounded. Long Tsong strode over and said with a smile, You're back at the right time. Let's fight again. I've comprehended another innate divine power that I can show you. Chapter 1409. Oh! Su Zimo shifted his gaze to Long Tsong and nodded slightly. Not bad, you've already entered the conjoint body realm. Long Tsong had been stuck at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm for many years. Although he was defeated in the battle against Su Zimo, it ignited his fighting spirit instead. Furthermore, he gained a lot from that battle. Not long after returning to seclusion, he felt his cultivation realm loosen and broke through to the conjoint body realm. When he was at the Dharma characteristic realm, Long Tsong had already comprehended two innate divine powers. After entering the conjoint body realm, he comprehended another innate divine power and his combat strength increased exponentially. That was the reason why he looked for Su Zimo excitedly and wanted to fight again. Long Tsong, what are you doing? Long Shi frowned and glared at Long Tsong, saying in an unfriendly tone, Young master has just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and you're already at the conjoint body realm. Why are you fighting? It's not fair at all. Ha! Long Tsong laughed and mocked. You're already feeling the pinch before we even start fighting. If we really fight, the two of you will have to join forces. It's none of your business. Long Shi waved her fists. Forget it. Long Tsong smiled. Young master, let's fight again when you enter the conjoint body realm. Among these dragons, you're the only one worthy of being my opponent. Conjoint body realm? Su Zimo smiled gently. I'm one now. Long Tsong was stunned. The dragons widened their eyes as well and looked at Su Zimo in disbelief, thinking that they had heard wrongly. How many years had it been since their young master entered the Dharma characteristic realm? Dragons had long lifespans. For dragons, the passage of these years was like the blink of an eye and they did not feel anything at all. Su Zimo did not say anything else and merely released the might of a conjoint body slowly. The dragons were shocked. Indeed! Long Tsong was also overjoyed. His eyes lit up as he said, Good, good, good. That's perfect. Let's go to the Dragon Blood battlefield and fight again. You are no match for me. Su Zimo shook his head. What is it? Long Tsong's face darkened, and he said with some displeasure, Are you looking down on me? After all, Long Tsong had the bloodline of the five-clawed divine dragon, which was the noblest bloodline among dragons. He had his own pride in his bones. He had indeed lost to Su Zimo in the past, and he had accepted his defeat wholeheartedly. But he never admitted defeat. He believed that one day, he would defeat Su Zimo fair and square. He wanted to reclaim the glory that belonged to the five-clawed divine dragon. Su Zimo shook his head and did not explain. Instead, he activated his bloodline and his bones crackled as an extremely terrifying aura burst forth from his body.
What?
Su Zimo reared his head and roared into the skies. That roar was not purely a dragon's roar. There was also a clear and loud phoenix cry mixed in. Immediately after, Su Zimo's hands transformed into a pair of menacing claws. Suddenly, a pair of gigantic wings extended from his back. Every single feather was scarlet in color and burned with raging flames. Su Zimo did not completely conjure his dragon phoenix body. Even so, the taboo aura emitted from his body caused the dragons to change their expressions and shudder. The dragons present knelt on the ground one after another with shocked expressions. Even Long Tsong lowered his head against the taboo aura. At that moment, the bloodline of the five-clawed divine dragon was completely suppressed. Not far away, there were a few elders of the dragon clan who were flying in the air, but when this aura descended, the elders of the dragon clan were greatly shocked. They hurriedly descended from the air, and their expressions were uncertain. Bang, bang, bang. One after another, powerful auras burst forth from the Dragon Bone Valley. Some of the grand elders of the dragons who were initially in seclusion were alarmed by the taboo aura and came out of seclusion one after another, looking over. Taboo Dragon Phoenix. The grand elder of the Black Dragon people exclaimed with widened eyes. It's done! The grand elder of the Candle Dragons could not help but burst into laughter in his excitement. The dragons were shocked when they heard the words Taboo Dragon Phoenix. Long Tsong felt a sense of helplessness as he looked at the figure in midair. A primordial taboo. Although his bloodline was shocking, he was extremely talented and had many trump cards. He did not have the ability to challenge a taboo up till now. Long Tsong laughed bitterly and shook his head. Initially, he was filled with confidence and looked forward to fighting against Su Zimo again. To think that the gap between the two of them would widen after a few years. Long, the voice of the Candle Dragon's Grand Elder sounded. Follow me to meet someone. Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and his gaze landed on Long Tsong. Nodding, he transformed into his human form and left with the Candle Dragon's Grand Elder. Before long, the two of them arrived in front of a gigantic cave. A strong herbal smell came from the cave that was extremely pungent. The cave was extremely spacious and there was only a single person with scarlet hair that resembled flames. His face was rough and his gaze was like a torch as he exuded an extremely powerful might. Red-headed ghost. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. You've already transformed into a dragon phoenix? The red-headed ghost swept his gaze across Su Zimo and asked. Su Zimo nodded before frowning. Red-headed ghost, you're injured? Yes. The red-headed ghost's expression turned terrible. Why aren't you recuperating in the primordial divine spring? Su Zimo asked again. The Candle Dragon's Grand Elder at the side explained. Although the primordial divine spring can revive the dead, its impact on Ancestor Realm experts is almost negligible. Who can hurt you? Su Zimo frowned and could not help but ask. What was the red-headed ghost's combat strength? Back then, he was able to fight against a Dharma overlord of the Buddhist monasteries, and both sides were severely injured. He had once destroyed 2 super sects single-handedly. But now, the red-headed ghost was injured. The red-headed ghost said in a deep voice, After I left the Dragon Burial Valley that day, I did not return to the Dragon Bone Valley. Instead, I went to another place. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and suddenly thought of something, blurting out, Thousand Demon Valley. That's right. The red-headed ghost nodded. You once mentioned to me that a blood face appeared in the 1,000-year blood sea of Thousand Demon Valley. Naturally, I had to check it out. Back then, a blood face was hidden at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. If not for Dai Yu's appearance, even Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost would not have noticed the existence of the blood face. As for the blood face, there was a high chance that it was the true culprit behind the destruction of the Great Qian Empire. The death of the red-headed ghost's child might have something to do with the blood face as well. Given the red-headed ghost's personality, there was naturally no way he would miss out on news of the blood face. "You saw him?" Su Zimo asked with a frown. "No," the red-headed ghost said with a grim expression. "I didn't manage to see clearly what was beneath the 1,000-year blood sea. However, I was injured and almost died within." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The 1,000-year blood sea was even more terrifying than he had imagined. The Candle Dragon's Grand Elder said in a deep voice, "Zimo, that blood sea is extremely terrifying. You must not set foot in it before you cultivate to the Mahayana realm." Su Zimo nodded. Chapter 1410. Where have you been for the past few years? The red-headed ghost asked. Su Zimo recounted his encounter on Divine Phoenix Island, including killing the 3 golden crow princes on Penglai Island and the Smoky Wave Guest. The Smoky Wave Guest, the Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons, narrowed his gaze. If nothing goes wrong, he should be the Saber Emperor of this generation. The red-headed ghost said in a deep voice, "Since your identity as the Dragon Phoenix has been exposed, it won't be long before it spreads throughout Tianhuang mainland. Don't leave the Dragon Bone Valley for the time being." This news would definitely cause a huge uproar when it spread to the various forbidden grounds. Once Su Zimo appeared, there was a high chance that the experts of the primordial races would attack and kill him. It was the same as Night Spirit back then. "Let's go to the ancestral dragon land." Right then, the red-headed ghost said in a deep voice, "Let Long Mo and Long Tsang go together. That's the only place where they can grow at the fastest speed." If the other primordial races were to join forces to kill the taboo dragon phoenix, the dragons would definitely not be able to defend against it. They might only be able to survive this calamity if they allowed the taboo to grow as soon as possible. Ancestral Dragon Land? Su Zimo was slightly stunned. He had not stayed in the Dragon Bone Valley for long, but he had never heard of such a place. That was a space created by the Dragon Phoenix in the primordial era. If the ancestral dragons of every generation could not transcend the tribulation and exhausted their lifespans, they would be buried there. The red-headed ghost said in a deep voice, "The ancestral dragon land is filled with an extremely rich ancestral dragon chi. You'll definitely be able to cultivate there with twice the results with half the effort. Why don't you let our clansmen cultivate there?" Su Zimo could not help but ask. The red-headed ghost sneered. "Do you think that the ancestral dragon chi is something that anyone can withstand? If you weren't a dragon phoenix and Long Tsang was a 5-clawed divine dragon, any other adult conjoint body dragon would explode and die if they entered." The Candle Dragon Grand Elder said, "The forbidden dragon phoenix of the primordial age must have left some inheritances in the ancestral dragon land. Only your bloodline is qualified to inherit them. Go there and cultivate. Unless the Dragon Bone Valley is destroyed, you will be perfectly safe in the ancestral dragon land. There won't be any danger." "All right." Su Zimo nodded. With Wu Dao's true body and Qinglian's true body taking care of Tianhuang mainland, there should not be much chaos. "Go ahead. I still have to go into seclusion to heal my injuries." The red-headed ghost waved his hand. "Come with me." The Zhu Dragon's Great Elder was the first to leave the cave, followed by Su Zimo. Soon, the two of them arrived in front of the ancestral dragon divine pillar. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons spread out his spirit sense and sent out a series of messages. Before long, the Grand Elders of the other 4 dragons had all arrived, including Long Tsang. "Open up the ancestral dragon land and send Long Mo and Long Tsang in," the Zhu Dragon's Great Elder said in a deep voice. Normally speaking, opening the ancestral dragon land required the elders of the 5 lineages to discuss together. But now, Su Zimo was a dragon phoenix and Long Tsang was a 5-lineage divine dragon. This was an unprecedented situation. There was no need for discussion and the 5 grand elders made the decision directly. The spatial node of the ancestral dragon land was on the ancestral dragon divine pillar. The 5 grand elders joined forces and each pricked their fingertips, squeezing out a drop of blood. It landed in midair and transformed into a divine dragon that entered the ancestral dragon divine pillar. Only the bloodline of the 5 dragons of the ancestral dragon could open up the ancestral dragon land. Rumble. Boom. The ancestral dragon divine pillar swayed and a gigantic cave gradually appeared on the gigantic stone pillar, filled with an ancient aura. Long Imo, Long Tsong, go on in. The Zhu dragon's great elder nodded slightly with a hint of anticipation and relief in his eyes. Su Zimo and Long Tsong exchanged glances and entered the cave without hesitation, disappearing from the Dragon Bone Valley. This was an extremely desolate land. From afar, there was no green life force. In the distance, there were gigantic stone pillars that towered into the skies with words that belonged to dragons carved on them. Beneath every stone pillar, there was an ancestral dragon buried there. The stone pillars were like tombstones of the human race. The moment the 2 of them arrived in this space, they sensed an extremely powerful ancestral dragon chi surging into their bodies wildly, tempering and changing their bodies. Ugh! Long Tsong grunted. In just the blink of an eye, his skin began to crack open, leaving bloody marks on his body. His entire body was covered in blood. One had to know that the ancestral dragon chi here was left behind by the former ancestral dragon tribe. Normally speaking, only ancestral dragons could cultivate here. Conjoint body mighty figures could not withstand it at all. However, Long Tsong was a 5-clawed divine dragon after all. Although he was only at the conjoint body realm, his physique and bloodline were already extremely strong. He endured the baptism of the ancestral dragon chi and panted heavily. On the other side, Su Zimo merely frowned. The ancestral dragon chi entered his body and gradually fused into his physique and bloodline without causing much of a reaction. The difference between the 2 of them was obvious. Is it all right? Su Zimo turned around and asked. He could not help with that pain and could only rely on Long Tsong to endure, resolve and comprehend it himself. It's all right, let's go. Long Tsong grit his teeth and said. Under the immense pain, his voice trembled slightly. Su Zimo nodded and began walking towards the tall stone pillars in the distance. After taking a few steps, Su Zimo frowned. The deeper he went into the ancestral dragon grounds, the richer, stronger and more berserk the ancestral dragon chi became. After taking a few steps, even his dragon phoenix body felt a little uncomfortable. Su Zimo turned back. True enough. Long Tsong had a pained expression and could no longer hold on. The veins on his neck popped and he suddenly growled deeply. He reverted to his true form and lay on the ground, panting heavily as he dispelled the ancestral dragon chi in his body. I can't advance any further. Long Tsong's voice was weak. Young master, walk forward yourself. Be careful. All right. Su Zimo nodded and turned to continue forward. As he gradually ventured deeper into the ancestral dragon grounds, the ancestral dragon chi became richer and surged into his body wildly, baptizing his bloodline and physique continuously. By the time Su Zimo arrived outside the tomb, his dragon phoenix body had reached its limits as well. Su Zimo was sweating profusely and scarlet scales grew on his body. He was on the verge of reverting to his true form. There's actually a junior who can make it this far? Right then, Su Zimo suddenly heard a soft exclamation of surprise. Su Zimo looked in the direction of the voice. At the entrance of the graveyard, there was an old man with 1 foot in the grave. He was looking at him with a hunched and thin body. He held a broom in his hand and seemed to be cleaning the graveyard. The old man's gaze was filled with a strange power. The ancestral dragon chi in Su Zimo's body exploded instantly. Roar! Su Zimo reared his head and roared into the skies, completely reverting to his true form. He had the body of a dragon and the tail of a phoenix. A pair of gigantic scarlet wings grew on his back and his entire body burned with raging flames. The ancestral dragon chi revolved and its might spread, causing the entire ancestral dragon grounds to tremble. Taboo Dragon Phoenix. The old man narrowed his eyes. Chapter 1411. Suddenly, the cultivation world of Tianhuang mainland was in an uproar as news spread one after another, causing a huge uproar, and countless cultivators of the sects were shocked. Have you heard? Araki Takashi isn't dead. He appeared in the southern region a while ago. I heard about it too. I heard that the primordial divine spring even appeared in the southern region and was occupied by the Nangong family. It seems like Araki Takashi fought with the 3 aristocratic families before. I don't know the details. Back then, Su Zimo killed many mighty figures and 2 half-martial ancestors of the Dongfang and Shimen aristocratic families in the underground of Baiming town. Both aristocratic families kept quiet about this matter. Who would publicize this kind of thing with great fanfare? Therefore, although there was news of Araki Takashi's appearance in the cultivation world, no one knew what exactly happened in the southern region. Araki Takashi is truly lucky. He didn't die even after being exiled into the void by a half-martial ancestor. I heard that Araki Takashi has already entered the conjoint body realm. If he enters the conjoint body realm, I'm afraid only half-martial ancestors in the cultivation world can suppress him. Chaos Essence Sect. D. Fan sat in his cave abode with a grim expression when he heard the news from his disciples. He said in a deep voice, "Send some more cultivators to the southern region to investigate Araki Takashi's whereabouts. Report any news immediately." Master, if Araki Takashi enters the conjoint body realm, he must have fused with 3 supreme Dharma bodies. I'm afraid it'll be troublesome. The cultivator said in a deep voice. D. Fan said coldly, "No matter how strong he has only just entered the conjoint body realm. A half-martial ancestor is not someone a conjoint body mighty figure can challenge across major cultivation realms." The cultivator replied hurriedly. After pondering for a moment, D. Fan continued, "You don't have to worry too much. If I attack again, I won't be alone. This time round, even if I have to join forces with other half-martial ancestors, I'll kill Araki Takashi completely." In the world of self-cultivators, when they heard the news that Araki Takashi was still alive, some hated him, some were worried, and naturally, some were happy. For example, the people from Misty Peak, Great Zhou Dynasty's Ji Yaoshue, 100 Refinement Sects Extreme Fire, Elixir Yang Sects Xiaoning, Demon Sects Demonis Ji. Apart from the world of cultivators on Tianhuang continent, it also caused a great stir in the Forbidden Lands. The fact that Araki Takashi was still alive was not a big deal to the Forbidden Lands. What really set off a storm in the Forbidden area was the news from Penglai Island. Descent of the Dragon Phoenix. Moreover, this Dragon Phoenix was one of Araki Takashi's true bodies. This news had just spread over when it alarmed the various Forbidden Lands ancestor realm powerhouses. I heard that the Dragon Phoenix has already returned to the Dragon Bone Valley. It's not easy for us to attack. That old fart from the Dragon Clan should still be alive. With him around, it's indeed difficult. Actually, there's no need to worry, a powerful humanoid living being said slowly. If a taboo wants to grow, it requires immense resources. Without a long time, it can forget about entering the ancestor realm. That's right. Although the bloodline of a taboo is strong, it's extremely difficult to enter the ancestor realm. Becoming an emperor is even harder than ascending to the heavens. Furthermore, that old bastard dragons doesn't have many years left to live. Another humanoid living being said indifferently, that old bastard will probably die before the Dragon Phoenix grows up. Without him, the dragons are like pythons without claws and fangs. They're still at our mercy. What about Araki Takashi's Qinglian's true body? Another person asked. I heard that Araki Takashi's Qinglian's true body is not dead either. Furthermore, it has already entered the conjoint body realm. That's easy to handle, someone said. There are no sects or factions in the human race that can protect him. We don't even have to do anything. Any half-martial ancestor can kill him. Furthermore, there are some monster incarnates among the younger generation of the primordial races in this generation as well. For example, the divine prince of the Protoss, the Shao Xiang goddess, the 7th prince of the Golden Crow race, Yu Luosha of the Rakshasa race, young Master Gui Wu of the Witch race, Teng Lingzi of the Bloodvine race, and the remnant Eye of our Heavenly Eye race. Any one of them is enough to kill Araki Takashi. The birth of these monster incarnates of the primordial races is a disaster for the cultivation world of Tianhuang mainland. Another humanoid living being grinned with a cruel expression. Another person seemed to have recalled something and sighed emotionally. However, speaking of which, although the remnant Eye's talent and intelligence are strong and he did not hesitate to destroy his own eyes in order to cultivate the Heavenly Eye, his achievements are probably not comparable to that person back then. Are you talking about that abandoned child back then? That's right. That lad's mother had an agreement with a human cultivator and he was born. Therefore, his bloodline was impure and he was considered a bastard and was despised by his clansmen. However, to think that this lad would display such terrifying talent after joining the Buddhist monasteries of the human race. Although his bloodline was impure, his combat strength was stronger than any of the Heavenly Eye race members. He became the strongest young cultivator of the human race in that generation. The other person nodded as well with a reminiscing gaze. Back then, only the remnant of the Bloodvine race could fight against him. It's a pity that both of them died many years ago. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. It's long in the past. Two great taboos have descended one after another. Seems like this generation is indeed unusual. The fortune of the human race has run out. No matter who it is, nobody can stop us from returning and ruling over Tianhuang mainland. The human race has occupied Tianhuang mainland for so many years. It's time to return. North region. The land of the far north was filled with glaciers and snowy mountains. Indeed, there was a North Sea among the three seas. However, the surface of the North Sea was frozen for 10,000 years and the ice layer was at least 100 feet thick. A bone-chilling wind blew here all year round. The extreme north-east wind of the first stage of the Three Tribulations domain of the Tao Inheritance Ground was the cold wind outside the North Sea. Even conjoint body mighty figures did not dare to enter the depths of the North Sea Glacier. That was because the depths of the North Sea Glacier was one of the 9 forbidden grounds of Tianhuang mainland. It was also the legendary North Sea. In such a harsh environment, it was completely deserted. No cultivator would come here at all. Not even vegetation could be seen on the North Sea Glacier. However, on this day, a person arrived on the North Sea Glacier. This person looked young and wore purple robes. His black hair draped over his shoulders, his eyes were clear and his face was delicate as he walked towards the depths of the glacier. The purple robes on this person were thin but his face was rosy as though he could not feel any coldness. A bone-chilling wind howled. When it blew on this person, it disappeared instantly, as though it was evaporated. The snowflakes that filled the skies above the glacier turned into water droplets and fell within a 10-feet radius of this person. This person advanced slowly without a single snowflake falling from his body. This purple-robed youth was Wu Dao's true body who had rushed over from the south region. By the time Wu Dao's true body arrived at the North Sea Glacier, the Dragon Phoenix true body had already returned to the Dragon Bone Valley and entered the ancestral Dragon Land. Thereafter, the Dragon Phoenix true body severed its connection with the two true bodies and entered seclusion to cultivate. The reason why Wu Dao's true body came to the frozen North Sea was because of a single matter. Chapter 1412. For other cultivators, the North Sea Glacier was a bitter and cold place. The chilling wind was bone-chilling. Cultivators with low cultivation realms and weak bloodlines would not be able to stay here, let alone stroll leisurely on the glacier. However, that was nothing for Wu Dao's true body. Wu Dao's true body had a strong blood qi and his entire body was like a gigantic furnace. His martial spirit burned fiercely and any chilling wind would turn into nothingness before they could approach him. Wu Dao's true body advanced on the North Sea Glacier. Unknowingly, more than half a month had passed. He was in no hurry. Instead, he released his spirit consciousness and sensed some of the mysteries of the North Sea Glacier. This bitter and cold place was not as lifeless as it seemed on the surface. On the contrary, if one were to investigate carefully, they would be able to see some life forms that could only be born in such an environment within the glacier. Wu Dao's true body could clearly sense an ice silkworm lying quietly in the crevice of the glacier not far away. This ice silkworm was extremely precious. The silk that it spat out contained an extremely cold attribute that was not inferior to divine weapons. If it was not troublesome, armor made from the ice silkworm's silk would also be the best defensive dermic weapon. This environment gave birth to some strange life forms. Wu Dao's true body did not harm them and merely smiled gently as he continued traversing the glacier. When his feet landed on the glacier, he could even sense some living beings living in the deep sea beneath the thick glacier. This place was not far away from North Sea. The closer he was to North Sea, the lower the temperature. To be able to survive in this sea, one had to be at least the overlord of a region. They were equivalent to the Dharma Daojun of the human race. At that moment, 3 North Sea demons were gathered beneath Wu Dao's true body in the ocean region beneath the glacier. Great demons of the demon race were equivalent to conjoint body mighty figures of the human race. It was nothing much for great demons to gather. However, the conversation of the 3 North Sea demons made Wu Dao's true body frown. Why would a human come to North Sea? I'm not sure. Judging from this human's cultivation, he's only just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. To be able to make it this far, this person's blood qi is so strong. That's right. Such strong qi and blood are great supplements for us. The 3 great demons began to discuss in the deep sea. One of the great demons exclaimed softly, "This person has stopped. Could it be that he can hear our conversation? How is this possible?" Another demon shook his head. This place isn't like the periphery of North Sea where the glacier is close to 1,000 feet thick. Even conjoint body mighty figures won't be able to hear what we're discussing below. Moreover, if he heard our conversation, his first reaction would be to turn around and run away. That's right, huh? The 3 North Sea monsters were gathered in the depths of the sea. Through the thick layer of ice, they looked up at Wu Dao's true body and discussed how to divide and devour him. This human is way too skinny. He's not even enough to fill the gaps between our teeth. A huge ancient killer whale said with a buzzing sound. It'll be fine after you're done talking. Another ancient frost shark laughed. You're still hoping for a puny human to fill your stomachs? Right then, a commotion came from the top of the glacier. The 3 great demons in the deep sea looked over and could not help but frown. With every step that the human took, the glacier beneath his feet would melt, leaving a deep footprint on it. It didn't take long for the human to walk a circle above them. The 3 great demons were shocked to discover that the human's footprints were connected and surrounded the area they were in. What was this for? Was this a warning? The 3 North Sea great demons exchanged glances. They did not feel any fear and were enraged instead. They were great demons of North Sea who roamed this place fearlessly. Apart from some living beings in the forbidden grounds of North Sea, who else would dare to threaten them? Moreover, this was an outsider from the human race. Furthermore, this human was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. This was not a warning. This was a provocation. The 3 great demons no longer hesitated and burst forth from the depths of the sea. Bang, bang, bang. There were 3 deafening sounds. The glacier of North Sea exploded and 3 figures with powerful auras tore through the layers of glacier and leaped out from the depths of the sea. The 3 North Sea great demons had already transformed into their human forms and stood in midair. Even so, the humanoid great demons still exuded a powerful might. Their bodies seemed to be one with the entire world and were unshakable. The 3 North Sea great demons surrounded Wu Dao's true body in the middle with cold and murderous expressions. Wu Dao's true body was expressionless as he looked at the 3 great demons in midair and asked indifferently, "Didn't you guys see my warning?" "Warning?" The ancient frost shark sneered. "Do you think a mere Dharma Daojun like you is worthy of warning us? From your tone, you must be from some major sect." The ancient killer whale grinned. When the 3 great demons saw how calm Wu Dao's true body was against their might, they deduced that Wu Dao's true body must be a paragon of some super sect. The ancient killer whale changed the topic. "However, this is not your cultivation world. This is North Sea, one of the 8 demon regions. How dare you come to our territory and act so arrogantly in front of us? You must be tired of living. The other great demon was an ancient giant horseshoe crab. The giant horseshoe crab laughed as well. Even if you're a disciple of a super sect, no one will know who killed you if you die in this desolate and cold place. No matter how powerful the faction backing you is, it's no threat to us great demons who can come and go as we please. Wu Dao's true body shook his head. I don't have any faction backing me, nor am I a disciple of a super sect. After pausing for a moment, Wu Dao's true body continued, however, you guys had better not provoke me. I'm the greatest threat myself. The 3 North Sea great demons froze for a moment, as though they had heard something unbelievable. Ha! Immediately, the 3 North Sea great demons burst into laughter with mocking expressions. My horizons have truly widened, the ancient frost shark grinned. Nowadays, even an early-stage Dharma characteristic human cultivator dares to come to our territory and threaten great demons. Let's see what you're going to threaten us with. The ancient killer whale roared and transformed into a streak of light in a flash, charging towards Su Zimo fiercely. The ancient killer whale believed that with its conjoint body realm physique, it could smash the Dharma Dao Jun into pieces just by charging forward. Wu Dao's true body's expression turned cold and his eyes lit up. His martial spirit burned and his blood chi churned, letting out a deafening boom. It was as though he had vanished, leaving only a gigantic furnace on the spot. The thick glacier beneath the furnace melted rapidly. Gulp, gulp. The seawater in this region boiled instantly with a terrifying might. Chapter 1413. The ice layer that was close to 1,000 feet melted in the blink of an eye and the seawater boiled. One could imagine how high the temperature of this cauldron was. The ancient killer whale had just rushed close when he felt a rolling heat wave rushing towards him. His hair and beard instantly burned. In the ancient killer whale's senses, there seemed to be a huge cauldron in front of him. If he continued to charge over, it would be equivalent to jumping into the cauldron and being burned to ashes. The ancient killer whale hurriedly stopped. Right then, Wu Dao's true body attacked. There were no fancy techniques or movements. It was just a simple punch towards the ancient killer whale. Blood chi surged and the sound of a tsunami could be heard. Tsunami blood. The 3 North Sea great demons were shocked. Although they had cultivated to the level of great demons, their bloodlines had not reached the level of tsunami blood. At that moment, the blood chi that erupted from Wu Dao's true body's punch almost drowned the ancient killer whale. The ancient killer whale only felt suffocated and did not even have time to transform into his true body. He could only raise his arms and resist with all his might. At the same time, the ancient killer whale urged his essence spirit and prepared to use his arms to block the attack of his true body before transforming into his true body. Bang! Wu Dao's true body punched heavily on the ancient killer whale's arms. Crack! Immediately after, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The ancient killer whale's thick arms were broken by Wu Dao's true body's fist. What was even more terrifying was that the power of this punch was as turbulent as the sea and as violent as fire. It broke the ancient killer whale's arms without any signs of weakening. The ancient killer whale's true body had only transformed halfway. Wu Dao's true body's fists landed heavily on his body. Terrifying power surged into his body instantly and destroyed all the vitality in the great demon's body. His internal organs were smashed and more than half of his bones were shattered. Boom! Under the gazes of the ancient frost shark and the ancient giant horseshoe crab, the ancient killer whale was blown up by Wu Dao's true body before it could even transform into its true body. Its essence spirit had just escaped when it was crushed by Wu Dao's true body's fist intent that was as heavy as a mountain. It died on the spot. A great demon of the North Sea who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years had been smashed to pieces by a single punch. Initially, the other 2 great demons had the mentality of watching the show and had no intention of attacking. At this moment, the remaining 2 North Sea monsters were completely dumbfounded. Was this the power of the Dharma Dao Jun? How could this be? Although the ancient killer whale had fallen and didn't even transform into its true form, It had underestimated its enemy. But even so, it was impossible for the two great demons to destroy the ancient killer whale's body with a single punch. At this moment, Wu Dao's original body turned around and his gaze landed on them. His expression was as calm as water, and his expression was indifferent. To the Dharma Dao Jun, killing a great demon was as normal as eating and drinking. The calmer Wu Dao's true body was, the more disturbed the hearts of the two demons were. Wu Dao's gaze caused the two great demons' hair to stand on end. Roar! The two great demons did not dare to think too much and reverted to their true forms right away. In the void, a gigantic shark demon floated. Its body was more than 1,000 feet long and every single one of its teeth shone with a cold glint like divine weapons as it emitted an extremely cold aura. Another ancient giant horseshoe crab appeared, resembling a gigantic tortoise shell with a long tail behind it. Beneath the shell, long legs grew side by side. They were sharp and opened their bloody mouths with a torrential stench. Compared to the two great demons, Wu Dao's true body was as insignificant as a speck of dust. However, in terms of aura, the two great demons were completely disadvantaged. Wu Dao's true body walked towards the two great demons with a calm expression. The might of a conjoint body mighty figure and the rich and violent demonic qi could not get close to him at all. His body was like a gigantic furnace that could refine all living things. Pressure and demonic qi were refined into nothingness the moment they descended. A hint of wariness and fear flashed through the depths of the two great demons' eyes. The two great demons thought that after they reverted to their true forms, the Dharma Dao Jun would have to be wary no matter what. At that time, they would turn and leave after saying some pleasantries. However, to their surprise, Wu Dao's true body was fearless and walked straight towards them. It was clear that he had no intention of letting them off. "Let's go!" The two great demons exchanged glances and darted towards the depths of the sea in unison. They were demon beasts of the deep sea after all. Although they were at the conjoint body realm and did not feel any discomfort on land, their combat strength could be unleashed to its limits in the depths of the sea. Furthermore, if they could not win, their speed of escape in the depths of the sea was much faster than on land. Humph! Wu Dao's true body had a mocking expression as he said indifferently, "It's too late for you to escape now." Since he had decided to attack, Wu Dao's true body would not be merciful. If he let experts of this level escape, they would undoubtedly become a hidden threat. In a flash, Wu Dao's true body vanished from the spot and traversed the voids at such a speed that there was even a buzzing sound. Thump, thump. The two great demons fell into the sea and their massive bodies stirred up thousands of waves with a terrifying might as they slapped towards Wu Dao's true body. However, although the raging waves were terrifying with immense force, they evaporated into steam before they could land on Su Zimo's body. Steam rose from the glacier and coiled around it. At first glance, it looked like an immortal realm. However, the steam was filled with fatal killing intent. A black shadow tore through the air with an extremely sharp edge and shone with a cold glint. Instantly, it arrived at the glabella of Wu Dao's true body. It was extremely accurate without any mistake. If it pierced the glabella of Wu Dao's true body, his essence spirit would not even have a chance to escape. That was the long tail of the ancient giant horseshoe crab. Although the ancient giant horseshoe crab seemed to have turned and fled into the depths of the sea, it made use of the steam to release a fatal killing move in reverse, wanting to kill Wu Dao's true body on the spot. Light of a firefly. Wu Dao's true body was expressionless as he smiled indifferently. In a flash, he suddenly reached out and grabbed the tail of the giant horseshoe crab that was piercing over. Bush, 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 bush. Sharp spikes suddenly grew from the initially smooth tail, wanting to pierce the palm of Wu Dao's true body. This kind of unforeseen event was absolutely without warning. Furthermore, Wu Dao's true body's palm was gripping the tail of the giant horseshoe crab tightly and it was too late to dodge. That was a killing move of the ancient giant horseshoe crab. With this method, countless demonic beasts had died under his long tail over the years. Once the palm of the Dharma Dao Jun was pierced, the tail of the giant horseshoe crab would release a strong poison. The blood chi of the Dharma Daojun was strong and he might not die on the spot. However, he would be affected and his strength would weaken as a result. As for the giant horseshoe crab's long tail, it could pierce the glabella of the person and kill the latter's essence spirit. The ancient giant horseshoe crab had a good plan. However, it was wrong right from the start. Those spikes could not pierce the body of Wu Dao's true body at all. Chapter 14:14. Wu Dao's foundation was his body. Martial artists did not need spirit roots nor could they sense the spirit chi of heaven and earth. They could only use their bodies as a foundation to develop their potential and create mystic realms. The body of Wu Dao's true body was the furnace of Wu Dao. It nurtured countless sutras and contained all dharmas. The fire of his martial spirit burned and tempered endlessly throughout the year. Even the true bodies of dragons back then could not compare to the strength of that body. How shocking was it to possess the power of dragons and elephants at the Jin Dan realm. Although the tail of the ancient giant horseshoe crab was sharp, it could not pierce the flesh of Wu Dao's true body. The ancient giant horseshoe crab was shocked and its eyes were filled with disbelief. How was that possible? As a grand demon, its claws and fangs could even fight against mighty figures' dharmic weapons. However, it could not pierce the flesh of Dharma Daojun. The ancient giant horseshoe crab was finally afraid. At that moment, Wu Dao's true body frowned. Although the tail of the ancient giant horseshoe crab did not pierce his flesh, it still caused him to feel a sense of pain. The expression of Wu Dao's true body turned cold as he exerted strength with his arm and dragged the massive body of the ancient giant horseshoe crab out of the depths of the sea. Although the ancient giant horseshoe crab had the power to overturn rivers and seas, it could not control its body against the palm of Wu Dao's true body and was tossed high into the air. Wu Dao's true body leaped and punched the back of the ancient giant horseshoe crab. Crack, crack, crack. A series of cracks appeared on the back of the ancient giant horseshoe crab, expanding and extending rapidly. The ancient giant horseshoe crab did not have many killing moves and its forte was defense. The giant horseshoe crab race was born with a carapace that was invulnerable to weapons, water, and fire. Even demon beasts stronger than them could not attack them. However, at that moment, a single punch from Wu Dao's true body shattered the carapace of the ancient giant horseshoe crab. Without the protection of the tough carapace, the terrifying power penetrated the body of the ancient giant horseshoe crab instantly. Flesh and blood splattered in midair in an extremely tragic manner. The primordial spirit of the ancient giant horseshoe crab turned into a streak of light and fled into the distance. Wu Dao's main body stretched out his hand and grabbed at the void. The void in the distance shook and twisted. The nascent divinity of the ancient giant horseshoe crab was instantly killed by the twisting space. The storage pouch of Wu Dao's true body suddenly moved. Something with a mysterious aura jumped out. It was round and its body was covered with strange patterns. It was emitting a powerful devouring power. This round thing was the Kuan-Pung egg. The Kuan-Pung egg could no longer hold back after sensing the smell of flesh and blood outside. Without waiting for Wu Dao's real body to call out to it, it ran out of the storage pouch on its own. It was extremely excited and began to devour the flesh and blood essence of the two North Sea great monsters. Demon beasts as enormous as the ancient killer whale and the ancient giant horseshoe crab contained shocking amounts of chi and blood. Those two North Sea demons alone were more massive than the blood chi of more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures of the two aristocratic families. Only this North Sea could give birth to a Kuan-Pung. Wu Dao's true body ignored the Kuan-Pung egg. After killing the ancient giant horseshoe crab, the gaze of Wu Dao's true body shifted as though it could penetrate the seas and land on the ancient frost shark that was fleeing frantically in the depths of the sea. Wu Dao's true body leaped into the depths of the sea. Rumble. Boom. The seawater churned and spread to both sides, as though it was opening up a wide path for Wu Dao's true body. There was no seawater where Wu Dao's true body stepped on. Although he was in the depths of the sea, a gigantic vacuum was formed within 100 feet radius and no seawater surged in. The man and demon closed in rapidly. Wu Dao's true body was in the Wu Dao cauldron and refined countless sutras. Many powerful movement techniques were fused together and his speed was extremely terrifying. The ancient frost shark could not escape at all. Fellow Taoist, I'm rather famous in this ocean region. At the critical juncture of life and death, the ancient frost shark could not be bothered about its pride and took the initiative to beg for mercy. As long as you're willing to let me live, I'll definitely do anything for you in the future. I gave you a chance but you didn't cherish it, Wu Dao's true body said indifferently. Fellow Taoist, are you really going to kill me? The ancient frost shark's teeth creaked as it gritted its teeth. Its back was facing Wu Dao's true body and its eyes were filled with resentment and indignation. Wu Dao's true body did not say anything and his movement technique was even faster. Human, I'll fight it out with you. Seeing that it could not escape, the ancient frost shark spun around and roared. Its glabella shone as it gathered its spirit consciousness and released an essence spirit's secret skill. A gigantic cold light tore through the waves like a gigantic blade and slashed towards Wu Dao's true body. A battle between primordial spirits was not like a battle of magical powers or close combat. In the ancient frost shark's opinion, no matter how strong the Dharma Daojuan's physique was, there was a limit to the strength of his essence spirit due to his cultivation realm. It would be best if it could kill this person right away. Even if it could not, a fight between essence spirits would result in an internecine outcome. This human could forget about it. Essence spirit's secret skill? Wu Dao's true body had a calm expression and channeled his essence spirit as well. A purple flame floated out from his glabella with a shuddering aura. The flame looked extremely weak, as though it could be extinguished by a gust of wind. However, when the ancient frost shark's gigantic blade slashed against it, the purple flame merely flickered and continued burning. As for the ancient frost shark's gigantic blade, it would melt into nothingness in the blink of an eye. The ancient frost shark's pupils constricted and it was shocked. The purple flame did not continue drifting towards it and merely stopped not far away before extinguishing gradually. The ancient frost shark heaved a sigh of relief. All of a sudden, his expression changed. Within his consciousness, his essence spirit felt a piercing pain and an unbearable heat, as though there was a flame burning his essence spirit. Ah! The ancient frost shark let out a series of hysterical roars and its massive body rolled in the depths of the sea, causing raging waves. However, no matter how it struggled, it could not survive. The martial spirit fire of Wu Dao's true body had a similar effect as the reverse scale. It could not be touched. Once one's spirit consciousness came into contact with it, their essence spirit would be burned by the martial spirit fire. In a few breaths, the ancient frost shark had already quietened down. There were no injuries on its massive body that was more than 1,000 feet long. However, its essence spirit had already vanished within its consciousness, burned into nothingness by the martial spirit fire. The 3 North Sea demons were all dead. Wu Dao's true body waved his sleeves and swept up the ancient frost shark's corpse, heading back the way he came. Before long, he returned to the distance. The Kuenpreng egg was still trying its best to devour the blood essence of the ancient killer whale and ancient giant horseshoe crab. Wu Dao's true body tossed the ancient frost shark's corpse in front of the Kuenpreng egg as well. Eat up. The Kuenpreng egg bowed repeatedly to express its joy. Wu Dao's true body turned around and gazed in the direction of the North Sea, murmuring softly, "This should be the last time I'm feeding you. From now on, you'll return to the world that belongs to you and I don't know when we'll meet again." Initially, the Kuenpreng egg was extremely excited when it heard that. However, at that moment, it quietened down with a hint of disappointment. Chapter 14:15. Wu Dao's true body continued forward. The coldness in the depths of North Sea was even worse, and the chilling winds were bone-chilling. Even Wu Dao's true body had to channel his bloodline with all his might to withstand the chill. Within the range of Wu Dao's true body's spirit consciousness, he could no longer sense any life forms. He was already at the depths of North Sea. Right then, Wu Dao's true body raised his head and looked into the distance with a shocked expression. On the distant horizon, there were no more snow-white glaciers. Instead, There was a dark and deep ocean that emitted an extremely cold aura. Even the outermost region of North Sea was frozen all year round. However, this was the depths of North Sea. Yet, there was an ocean that could withstand the surrounding coldness without any signs of freezing. When he approached and stood at the edge of the glaciers, the shock he felt was even more intense when he looked at the deep ocean. The ocean was bottomless and boundless. It was so calm that it was frightening. It was as though there was an extremely terrifying living being hidden in the depths that could erupt at any moment and create torrential waves. Wu Dao's true body knew that this was the legendary forbidden ground of the Kuan race, North Sea. Xiao Yao, this is your home. Wu Dao's true body shifted Xiao Yao out of his storage bag and said softly. Although Xiao Yao was afraid of Wu Dao's true body, he already possessed sentience and knew that Wu Dao's true body was his master. At that moment, he was extremely reluctant and dawdled, unwilling to leave. Go on, Wu Dao's true body waved his hand. Cultivate well. Perhaps, I'll come and look for you again one day. I hope that you'll still acknowledge me as your master by then. The Kuan Peng egg remained motionless. Wu Dao's true body smiled gently and pushed gently. Water splashed everywhere. The Kuan Peng egg fell into the deep ocean and vanished in the blink of an eye. The Kuan Peng had returned to North Sea. Wu Dao's true body did not linger and turned to leave. He knew that if nothing went wrong, the Kuan Peng egg would cause a huge commotion in North Sea and the Kuan race would definitely spare no effort to hatch Xiao Yao. When that time came, the Kuan race, which possessed the forbidden Kuan Peng, would most likely be a force that could change the entire infinite region. After doing this, Wu Dao's original body headed towards Pingyang town and prepared to continue his seclusion. Time was running out. Although Su Zimo had 3 true bodies, none of them were strong enough if a war that engulfed Tianhuang mainland and involved the entire cultivation world were to erupt. He had to step into the Mahayana realm as soon as possible and become an ancestor realm powerhouse. At the same time, Qinglian's real body had already left the territory of the 3 aristocratic families and arrived in the vicinity of an ancient temple. One of the 6 Buddhist monasteries, Dipankara Temple. After the Dao inheritance ground, Su Zimo had not seen Mingzhen. During the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, all the major sects and forces had gathered. Mingzhen did not appear either. These were all considered normal. It was strange that Mingzhen did not appear after Patriarch Yuan Bei passed away. Given the relationship between Mingzhen and Patriarch Yuan Bei, he would definitely rush back to the North region when he heard about this. However, Mingzhen did not appear. Furthermore, Su Zimo did not receive any news from Mingzhen. Even the spirit crane that he sent to Daming Monastery did not receive any response. This time round, Su Zimo arrived at the South region by accident and arrived at Dipankara Temple. Dipankara Temple was passed down through the ages and every single building in the temple exuded an ancient aura filled with traces of time. Su Zimo descended from midair. Most people would have to pass through the sect gates to inform them of their first visit. If they traveled through the air, firstly, it would be disrespectful and secondly, it would be easy to cause misunderstandings. At the entrance of Dipankara Temple, there was a young novice monk on each side. Although the 2 young novice monks were young, they had already cultivated to the Jin Dan realm. Patron, please stop. A young novice monk reached out and stopped Su Zimo from afar, asking in a deep voice, Patron, may I ask why you're here at Dipankara Temple? I'm Araki Takashi and I'm here to look for an old friend of Dipankara Temple. Fellow Taoists, please go in and inform him. Su Zimo approached without putting on any airs of a mighty figure or making things difficult for the 2 Jin Dan realm novice monks. Instead, he cupped his fists and stated his purpose for coming. Araki Takashi? The 2 young novice monks turned their heads slightly and frowned, deep in thought. That name sounds familiar. One of the young novice monks murmured. All of a sudden, the other young novice monk seemed to have recalled something and his expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, Dao Lord Araki Takashi. And no, that's not right. You're Araki Takashi, a mighty figure? The young novice monk's face was pale and his lips were quivering. The other young novice monk glared at Su Zimo with widened eyes and said instinctively, Legend has it that Araki Takashi is a green-robed, black-haired man with refined features. That's right. Why, patron? No, senior, please wait here for a moment. I'll go in and inform him right away. One of the novice monks mumbled incoherently before turning around and running away. The other young novice monk seemed to be rather frightened as well and did not dare to linger as he ran up the mountain as well. Suzumo shook his head gently and chuckled. It was no wonder the two young novice monks were so frightened. Back at Shimen Manor, even a conjoint body mighty figure was intimidated by Araki Takashi's name and did not dare to attack him, let alone two Jin Dan realm novice monks. Suzumo was in no hurry either. He stood at the entrance of the mountain and closed his eyes to rest, waiting quietly. Time passed bit by bit. Soon an hour passed. The two young novice monks seemed to have disappeared and did not return. Suzumo's expression was unchanged and his eyes were still closed. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours passed. Suzumo frowned. Even if there were any mistakes in between, 2 hours was enough for the news to reach him. Suzumo took a deep breath and continued waiting without acting rashly. 4 hours. 6 hours. The sun in the west gradually set. Suzumo finally opened his eyes and declared expressionlessly, I am Araki Takashi and I'm here to meet an old friend of Dipankara Temple. This person is the titular disciple of Dipankara Temple. His voice was neither loud nor soft, but it spread to every corner of Dipankara Temple. Patron Araki Takashi, please return. Right then, a voice sounded from within Dipankara Temple. The titular disciple of Dipankara Temple was once known as Kongru. He doesn't know Patron Araki Takashi, nor is he an old friend of Patron Araki Takashi. Suzumo frowned. He remembered clearly that Mingzhen was once the titular disciple of Dipankara Temple. Could the titular disciple of Dipankara Temple have changed? Suzumo was already impatient and his expression turned cold as he declared once more, the old friend I want to meet is known as Mingzhen. A moment later, the voice from Dipankara Temple sounded once more. Mingzhen has already left the temple. Patron Araki Takashi, if you want to meet Mingzhen, please look for him yourself. Left the temple? Suzumo sneered internally. If Dipankara Temple had given him that explanation at the beginning, he might have believed it. But now, Dipankara Temple was secretive and did not even allow him to enter the sect. How could Suzumo believe that? Since that's the case, I, Araki Takashi, have arrived at Dipankara Temple today. I don't want to meet an old friend. Instead, I want to meet the eminent monks and discuss the Tao. With a cold expression, Suzumo rose into the air slowly and shouted, if the eminent monks refuse to meet me, don't blame me for barging in. Chapter 14:16. How dare you? Upon hearing Araki Takashi's words, a soft holler sounded from Dipankara Temple, as though the person who spoke was enraged as well. No matter what, Dipankara Temple was one of the 6 Buddhist monasteries after all. It was an absolute super sect of Tianhuang mainland that had a long history and stood tall. It had never been threatened as such. This is Dipankara Temple. How dare you act so brazenly here? The voice from the temple sounded sternly. Suzumo sneered. If this was in the past, he might not have been qualified. However, now that he was at the conjoint body realm, he would dare to barge in even if it was a super sect. This matter concerned Mingzhen and he had to get to the bottom of it no matter what. Suzumo ignored Dipankara Temple's warning and flew towards the entrance of the temple on the mountain. Araki Takashi. Seeing that Suzumo had ignored the warning, the voice from Dipankara Temple seemed to be a little anxious and continued, if you dare to advance rashly again, don't blame Dipankara Temple for suppressing you. Alright, I'd like to see the methods of the eminent monks of Dipankara Temple. Suzumo laughed. Activate the formation. The voice from Dipankara Temple sounded. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Around the Dipankara Temple, a blazing golden light burst out in an instant. It was dazzling, and the huge temple was tightly protected in it. It was the sect protection formation of Dipankara Temple. At the same time, sacred and vast Sanskrit chants came from the formation. When they entered the ears, they could not help but feel guilty and remorseful. If it was a cultivator with a lower cultivation realm, they would have put down their weapons and surrendered upon hearing the Sanskrit sounds. In fact, there was a high chance that they would convert to Buddhism. However, Su Zimo was proficient in the Buddhist monasteries and sat in the Tao inheritance ground for 5,000 years to deduce Wu Dao. That experience forged an unshakable and indestructible will. The Sanskrit sounds did not affect him at all. They went in one ear and out the other. However, the sect protection formation was indeed troublesome and it was almost impossible to barge in. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He just stared at the grand array with rapt attention. The monk in Randang Temple noticed that Su Zimo had stopped and seemed to be in a difficult situation. He could not help but speak again. "Benefactor Araki Takashi, please go back. If you want to force your way through the protective formation, you'll need the strength of a martial progenitor. Even a half-martial progenitor won't do. Furthermore, you have just entered the conjoint body realm." Su Zimo remained unmoved. In fact, he was already deducing the sect protection formation at this moment. His mind was spinning rapidly as he tried his best to find the eye of the formation. After 5,000 years of sitting in the Tao inheritance ground, Su Zimo's improvement and changes were indescribable. Wu Dao was the final harvest and result. However, during this period of time, Su Zimo had obtained the legacies of over 30 half-martial ancestors, and array formations were one of them. If he didn't have the legacy of array formations, he wouldn't have been able to comprehend that incomplete teleportation array. Benefactor Araki Takashi. When the monk of Randang Temple saw that Su Zimo was still unwilling to leave, he seemed to be a little impatient and said in a deep voice, "Buddha is benevolent. Our temple is not willing to incur enmity with you. This formation is only in a defensive state right now. If you're still unwilling to leave, don't blame me for activating the offensive formation." Foo. Right then, Su Zimo's eyes flashed and he suddenly laughed. "You won't have a chance," Su Zimo said indifferently. Boom. Su Zimo waved his sleeves and conjured a sword art. Instantly, 49 extremely sharp sword chi burst forth from his sleeves in a bedazzling manner. It was a vast expanse of whiteness as the world changed color and killing intent stirred the starry skies. Those were heaven-slaying sword chi that was extremely sharp. Under Su Zimo's control, the 49 heaven-slaying sword chi charged towards every corner of Randang Temple with extreme precision. Some of the sword chi entered the grass. Some of the sword chi pierced the green stones. Some of the sword chi severed the ancient trees. The expressions of the monks of Randang Temple changed starkly when they saw that. These sword chis were not randomly stabbing. The landing point of every single sword chi was the formation core of the sect protection formation. Actually, the sect protection formation was already rather complicated with 49 formation cores that formed a heavenly cycle and had extremely strong defensive capabilities. Only true Mahayana patriarchs could break through the formation with the power of divine powers. However, no matter how complicated and strong the formation was, there was ultimately a weakness and flaw: the formation core. The formation core was the core and key to the operation of the formation. No matter how strong the formation was, it would naturally not be able to withstand the destruction of the formation core. There was no way the 49 formation cores could defend against the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi and were pierced on the spot almost instantly. Rumble. The sect protection formation dissipated with a bang. This exchange took a lot of effort from Su Zimo. After all, it was an immense burden for him to find the 49 formation cores of the sect protection formation in such a short period of time. However, the situation was different in the eyes of the monks of Randang Temple. There was no way they knew how much effort Su Zimo had expended. In their eyes, Su Zimo had merely waved his sleeves gently and the sect protection formation had already disintegrated. Araki Takashi, it was clear that the monk of Randang Temple had not expected something as such to happen as well. Su Zimo strode forward and arrived in front of the tightly shut monastery, hollering softly, "Since the esteemed monks are unwilling to receive me, I, Araki Takashi, will pay you a visit." Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo gripped his fists tightly and threw a punch towards the monastery's door. Although the monastery's door was made of heaven and earth mystic stones and was extremely tough, there was no way it could defend against the power of a grade 7 creation Qinglian. Boom! The monastery's door was shattered by Su Zimo's punch and countless gravel exploded and splattered everywhere. Amidst the billowing dust, Su Zimo was like a god that looked down on the world and could not be offended as he stepped through the ruins and entered Randang Temple slowly. Opposite the monastery's door was the massive and majestic Heavenly King Hall. At that moment, there were many monks standing in front of the Heavenly King Hall. Although their cultivation realms varied, the weakest was at the Void Reversion realm. There were also many Dharma Daojun and more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures. The monks were wary as though they were facing a formidable enemy and glared at Su Zimo, who was walking in slowly. Although the leader of the group was a conjoint body monk. Although he was broad and fat, he had a dignified look on his face. He held a Vajra Zen staff in his left hand and a string of prayer beads in his right as he scrutinized Su Zimo. Patron Araki Takashi, how dare you barge into Randang Temple and destroy the monastery's door? The Vajra Zen staff in the hands of the fat monk slammed heavily on the ground and let out a deafening bang that lasted for a long time like a thunderclap. The slam of the Vajra Zen staff, coupled with the fat monk's shout, formed an extremely powerful sound domain attack. However, Su Zimo's expression was calm. A sound domain attack as such could not hurt a grade 7 creation Qinglian at all. In the current cultivation world, apart from some cultivators of the 3 aristocratic families, no one knew what sort of transformation Su Zimo had undergone in Baiming Town. Who are you? Su Zimo asked expressionlessly. I'm the abbot of Randang Temple and my dermic name is Hui Shen. The fat monk said slowly. Chapter 1417. Oh, Su Zimo replied casually with a calm expression. Given his current reputation, even if he saw the patriarch of the super sects, he could talk to them as equals without bowing. Araki Takashi, Buddha is benevolent. If you back down now, Dipankara Monastery can let bygones be bygones for today's matter. If you push your luck, don't blame our monastery for suppressing you as an external enemy. Abbot Hui Shen's expression was grim and his voice was stern. Master, there's no need to reason with him. A young monk stood out with a burning gaze and a powerful aura. Although he was at the Dharma characteristic realm, he was not afraid at all in front of Su Zimo. My former dermic name was Kongru and I'm the current titular disciple of Dipankara Monastery. You can also call me Dao Lord Dipankara. Kongru walked out slowly and looked at Su Zimo eagerly. I've long heard that Araki Takashi established his Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. His combat strength is heaven-defying and he's the #1 monster incarnate in history, invincible among his peers. Up till this point of my cultivation, I've never been defeated. I've even suppressed conjoint body mighty figures before. Today, I'll witness your capabilities, Patron Araki Takashi. Ha! Instead of being angry, Su Zimo laughed. Dipankara Monastery has truly broadened my horizons today. Su Zimo said, up till this point of my cultivation, I've swept through strong enemies. There are very few low-level cultivators who dare to challenge me. You're one of them. Kongru back down. Abbot Hui Shen frowned slightly and hollered softly. Although Abbot Hui Shen had never seen Su Zimo before, there were too many rumors about Araki Takashi over the years. It was definitely not a fluke that Araki Takashi was able to reach this day and obtain such a ferocious reputation. Kongru was indeed a rare paragon of Dipankara Monastery in this generation. However, he was still a little lacking if he wanted to challenge Araki Takashi across a major cultivation realm. Master, don't worry. I'm just sparring with benefactor Araki Takashi. Kongru still persisted. Her eyes burned with battle intent as she stared fixedly at Su Zimo, who was not far away. She even provoked him. What? Fellow Taoist Araki Takashi, do you not dare to fight me? Are you worried that your reputation will be ruined? Ha! Su Zimo laughed. Good. Su Zimo praised repeatedly as he strode towards Kongru. He nodded and said, It's very good that you have such courage. It's very rare, but unfortunately, Su Zimo didn't continue speaking and suddenly stopped in his tracks. Kong Rian watched as Su Zimo walked over warily. He took out a gigantic Zen staff from his storage bag and waved it gently, as though it was extremely heavy. The distance between the two was less than 10 feet. Su Zimo suddenly roared. Kill. Crack. There was a deafening sound. It was as though thunder had exploded beside Kong Ru's ears. Kong Ru's eyes widened and turned bloodshot instantly. Her mind went blank and she froze on the spot, as though she was struck by lightning. Thunderclap kills sound domain attack. After entering the conjoint body realm and transforming her body into a grade 7 creation realm, the power of Qinglian's sound domain attack had increased several times as well. Even a conjoint body mighty figure might not be able to withstand it, let alone Kong Ru, who was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. Unfortunately, your combat strength is slightly lacking, Su Zimo said indifferently. It was only then that he continued what he had not finished earlier on. Thump. Kong Ru fell stiffly to the ground with his eyes closed. Although he was still breathing, he had already fainted from the shock. The monks were in an uproar. A titular disciple of Dipankara Monastery was fainted by a single roar from Araki Takashi. This exchange of blows was extremely sudden and short. The sound domain attack burst forth instantly. Even if Abbot Hui Shen and the other monks wanted to help, it was too late. Furthermore, Abbot Hui Shen and the other monks were not too far away from Su Zimo. Even so, their ears buzzed and their teeth ached from the shock of thunderclap kill. Dharma characteristic monks, retreat. Conjoint body monks, join forces with me. Abbot Hui Shen hollered and was the first to react. Waving his Vajra meditation staff, he charged towards Su Zimo. The other conjoint body monks summoned their destiny dermic weapons and surrounded Su Zimo as well. Araki Takashi, you barged into Dipankara Monastery, destroyed the formation, shattered the monastery's door and even injured our titular disciple. Don't blame us for joining forces to suppress you. Abbot Hui Shen said in a deep voice. You guys think you can suppress me? Su Zimo sneered. Boom. In a flash, Su Zimo transformed into a streak of light and arrived before Abbot Hui Shen instantly. He clenched his fist and punched. Abbot Hui Shen swung his Vajra meditation staff and smashed it viciously towards Su Zimo's fist. Su Zimo did not dodge or even change his move. You're asking for trouble. Abbot Hui Shen harumphed and did not stop. His Vajra meditation staff was made of diamond meteorite and was indestructible. It was a connate mighty figure dermic weapon and was not something that a body of flesh and blood could take head-on. Bang. With that thought, Abbot Hui Shen's Vajra meditation staff smashed heavily against Su Zimo's fist. There was no sign of bones cracking as he had imagined. Instead, there was a strange sound, as though he was defeated. He's fine? Abbot Hui Shen's pupils constricted as he looked at everything before him in disbelief. Immediately after, Abbot Hui Shen's expression changed. He felt a terrifying power surge into the Vajra meditation staff like an ocean. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Against that power, the Vajra meditation staff trembled uncontrollably. Even Abbot Hui Shen's strength could not suppress it. Su Zimo turned his fist into a palm and his strength turned from extreme hardness to extreme gentleness as he punched and shook the Vajra meditation staff. Ah! Abbot Hui Shen exclaimed as his palm tore apart and blood gushed out like a fountain. His destiny dermic weapon was snatched away by Su Zimo bare-handed. At that moment, the other conjoint body monks of Dipankara Monastery had already closed in. Many dermic arts and dermic weapons descended. Without turning back or looking, Su Zimo snatched the Vajra meditation staff and swung it in reverse. Woo-woo! The Vajra meditation staff transformed into a golden beam of light and tore through the air. Clang! The Vajra meditation staff collided with a wooden fish that flew over and shattered it. A conjoint body monk's expression changed starkly as he spat out blood. That wooden fish was his destiny dermic weapon, but it was crippled by Su Zimo in a single move. The Vajra meditation staff did not stop and smashed towards the chest of another conjoint body monk. The monk hurriedly retracted his destiny dermic weapon, It was a gigantic ancient bell that blocked in front of him. The Vajra meditation staff collided with the ancient bell and let out a long bang. The conjoint body monk shuddered and fell from midair with a dazed expression. His gaze was lifeless and his consciousness was blurry. He was stunned by the ancient bell in his arms. Swoosh! Suddenly, the sound of a tsunami could be heard from Su Zimo's body. Ah! Su Zimo reared his head and roared into the skies. His blood chi surged as he charged towards the dozen or so conjoint body cultivators that surrounded him. Bang! 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 Su Zimo shattered all the descending dermic arts barehanded without using any dermic weapons or dermic arts and repelled all the incoming dermic weapons, breaking through all dermic arts with brute force. Chapter 14:18. All the monks were shocked. The battle at Heaven and Earth Valley spread throughout the world and all the cultivators knew that Su Zimo's true body had many dermic arts and trump cards. His physique and bloodline could be considered as a weakness. However, they did not expect Su Zimo to release tsunami blood and break through all dermic arts with brute force, destroying all the dermic arts and weapons of the monks. The damning mantra of the 6 words echoed through the world. The Fiend Suppression Seal, Immortal Trap Seal, Demon Subduing Seal, Immovable Foundation Seal, Great Mount Meru Seal and Great Vajra Wheel Seal descended instantly. The monks conjured their secret skills once more to defend against it. However, Su Zimo had entered the conjoint body realm and attained the body of a grade 7 Qinglian. His black-haired essence spirit was tempered by the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend Tao arts and was even more condensed than a half-martial ancestor. With a single move of his spirit consciousness, he possessed boundless dermic powers. Even the most ordinary dermic arts were difficult to defend against, let alone a heaven-grade cultivation technique of Daming Monastery. Bang! 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 The monks that fought against the 6 Daming dermic seals were suppressed one after another and fell to the ground. Their faces were pale and their organs were shaken as they spat out blood. The moment Abbot Huishan charged forward, he was suppressed by the Great Mount Meru seal. In a flash, Su Zimo arrived before a conjoint body monk and flipped his palm, suppressing the monk's head. The monk was stunned by the damning mantra and reacted slightly slower. He could not dodge in time and could only raise his arms to defend. Snap! The conjoint body monk's arms were snapped by Su Zimo and he fell from midair. Without turning back, Su Zimo suddenly retreated and knocked into the embrace of another monk, sending him flying. Right now, Su Zimo was a humanoid grade 7 creation Qinglian. Against the encirclement of the monks, he rampaged and none of them could defend against him. The battle broke out and in less than 10 breaths, Abbot Huishan and more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures were defeated. Who are you? How dare you barge into my temple and injure my monks? At this moment, a stern shout suddenly came from the rear hall of Randang Temple. The voice was as loud as a bell, filled with endless dignity and anger. Boom! A terrifying aura soared into the sky. The aura of a half-martial ancestor. In the blink of an eye, a burly monk appeared above the heavenly king's hall. Wielding a demon-subduing pestle, he glared like an enraged Vajra with a fearsome might. Elder Huixing. When the monks saw this monk, their spirits were lifted and they all shouted. Most of the monks who practiced Buddhism abstained from anger and had a pure heart and few desires. However, Elder Huixing was an exception among the Buddhist monks. His temperament was explosive. Even though he cultivated Dharma, it had not changed for many years. He was incomparably strict and was in charge of punishment in Dipamkara Temple. The monks in the temple were extremely fearful of Elder Huixing. Elder Huixing was a true half-martial ancestor. I'm Araki Takashi. Su Zimo looked at Huixing and said indifferently, I'm here to pay my respects to an old friend. However, the eminent monks of Dipamkara Temple are secretive and refuse to meet me. That's why you barged into the sect. Elder Huixing glared angrily and shouted. I want to know about Mingzhen's situation. Su Zimo said, if the eminent monks tell the truth, I'll leave naturally. When he heard the words Mingzhen, Elder Huixing frowned. It was clear that he knew something as well. What a joke! Suddenly, Elder Hui Xing shouted, "You barged into the sect and injured our disciples of the Buddhist monasteries. Do you think you can leave unscathed? Araki Takashi, aren't you way too arrogant? I'll teach you a lesson today." The moment he said that, Elder Hui Xing leaped down from the Heavenly King's Hall and released the might of a half-martial ancestor. Gripping the fiend subduing pestle with both hands, he descended from the skies and smashed down towards Su Zimo's head. Against a half-martial ancestor expert, Su Zimo did not dare to be careless. The Grade 7 creation Qinglian could defend against mighty figures' dermic weapons. However, the dermic weapon of a half-martial ancestor was fused with a trace of divine powers and could already pose a threat to him. Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly and a green lotus platform suddenly flew out from his glabella. It shone with a series of resplendent lights and was emerald green in color. It was ingenious and looked like the most beautiful treasure in the world. Creation Lotus Platform. Heavens, it's the Grade 7 Creation Lotus Platform. When they saw the green lotus platform, the monks were shocked and exclaimed. Some of them even had a hint of greed in their eyes. The Creation Qinglian was an utmost treasure of the world and the Buddhist monasteries. Although it was only a Creation Lotus platform, it had already grown to Grade 7 and was an irreplaceable treasure. Who wouldn't be tempted? Holding the Creation Lotus platform in his hands, Su Zimo's blood qi surged and burst forth instantly, striking towards Elder Hui Xing's fiend subduing pestle. Boom! The Creation Lotus platform collided with the fiend subduing pestle and let out a deafening sound. A blinding light burst forth from the point of collision of the two dermic weapons. It was colorful and spread rapidly in all directions, causing the tiles on the Heavenly King's palace to fall. Su Zimo's body landed heavily on the ground, leaving two deep footprints on the ground. However, Elder Hui Xing did not have it easy either as he was sent flying by the terrifying power. He flipped a few times in midair before landing slowly. "Alright." The anger in Elder Hui Xing's eyes intensified as he said coldly, "No wonder you dared to barge into our sect and injure the monks of our monastery. So, you have something to rely on. To think that you can defend against my power. Half-martial ancestor? It's nothing much." Su Zimo had an indifferent expression as he flicked his finger. A white sword qi circled his fingertip in an extremely sharp manner. There were probably not many people in the world who would dare to say that a half-martial ancestor was nothing much. Extremely arrogant. Extremely arrogant. Enraged, Elder Hui Xing hollered, "Today, I'll let you witness the secret skills of Dipankara Monastery." Elder Hui Xing's hands changed continuously as he conjured hand seals. A shuddering aura emanated from Elder Hui Xing's hands. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. That was the power of divine powers. Those who could become half-martial ancestors had already touched the surface of divine powers and comprehended a trace of them. Even if it was only a trace of divine power, it was far stronger than dermic arts. Swoosh! A green lamp appeared between Elder Hui Xing's hands. There was a cluster of flames burning on it that flickered and flickered. However, that flame emitted a terrifying temperature. "Go!" Elder Hui Xing slapped his storage bag with his left hand and summoned a golden alms bowl that shone with a golden light. It expanded against the wind and rapidly arrived above Su Zimo's head. The golden alms bowl shone with a mysterious light that enveloped Su Zimo. That mysterious light possessed an extremely strange power that could restrain Su Zimo's figure. Su Zimo seemed to be rooted to the spot. Su Zimo frowned slightly and was about to channel his bloodline to negate that mighty power. "Go!" Elder Hui Xing hollered and pointed at Su Zimo. The cluster of flame on the bluish lamp descended in an instant. The methods of a half-martial ancestor were indeed extraordinary. Elder Hui Xing first used his dermic weapon to restrain Su Zimo's figure before enveloping him with a flame formed from the power of divine powers. His attacks were fluid without any gaps and Su Zimo could not dodge at all. Chapter 1419. When the flame of the divine power descended, it enveloped Su Zimo and burned furiously. Almost in the blink of an eye, Su Zimo's hair and clothes were burned to ashes. When they saw that, the monks heaved a sigh of relief. No matter how strong Araki Takashi was, he could not defend against the divine power of a half-martial ancestor. Even though he had only comprehended a little, it was enough to suppress Araki Takashi. Amidst the flames, Suzumo had a calm expression and there was no fear or pain in his eyes. Even though the fire of the divine ability was extremely powerful, to the extent that he was already feeling a burning pain, it was nothing to him. But the blood chi in Suzumo's body was channeled to its limits and surged like a tsunami with a terrifying might. Against the impact of that powerful blood chi, the divine power flame burning on his body weakened significantly. However, it was still burning without any signs of extinguishing. Humph! Elder Hui Xing said coldly, Araki Takashi, that flame contains a wisp of my divine power comprehension. Even if you cultivate to the tsunami blood realm, you won't be able to defend against it. Is that so? Suzumo's voice was still unusually calm. However, his aura was rising continuously. The flames flickered. All of a sudden, Elder Hui Xing's expression changed. Right in front of him, Suzumo's figure had already vanished from the flickering flames and was replaced by a lotus flower that was half the height of a person. It was jade green in color and had jade green lotus leaves. It was crystal clear and swayed gently in the flames. Even the fire of a divine ability would not be able to incinerate this green lotus. This is, when the other monks saw that as well, they were shocked and widened their eyes. A bloodline phenomenon? Elder Hui Xing's expression was grim as he vaguely realized something. Immediately after, the Qinglian soared into the skies as though it was about to break through the world. Lotus petals bloomed one after another and shone with 1,000 streaks of auspicious colors. There were 7 petals and 63 Qinglian seeds. That was the complete form of the grade 7 creation Qinglian, and its power was more than a level higher than the creation lotus platform. The golden alms bowl that was initially above Suzumo's head was sent flying by the creation Qinglian and landed not far away with a dim light. The creation Qinglian swayed gently. Heaven and earth shook. The divine power flame that enveloped the creation Qinglian was quickly suppressed by rays of light and was gradually extinguished. The divine power flame was extinguished. The monks were shocked. Even a half-martial ancestor could not suppress Araki Takashi. In the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, Desolate Martial was almost helpless against the power of a half-martial ancestor. It had only been a few years and Desolate Martial had already grown to such an extent? Suzumo's figure appeared once more. Initially, his hair and brows were burned to ashes. However, after cultivating to the conjoint body realm, his dermic powers were boundless and his long, black hair grew back quickly. Suzumo swiped his storage bag and took out a green robe, wearing it once more. You want to teach me a lesson with just that? Suzumo sneered and closed his sword fingers, slashing gently in the direction of Elder Hui Xing. Instantly, 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth. A vast expanse of white, blazing and dazzling, weaved into an inescapable net of sword chi that enveloped Elder Hui Xing. The heaven-slaying sword chi was way too sharp. Elder Hui Xing did not dare to be careless either. He waved the fiend subduing pestle in his hands and channeled dermic powers to conjure dermic arts, colliding with the incoming heaven-slaying sword chi. Clang, clang, clang. The heaven-slaying sword chi collided with the fiend subduing pestle and let out the sound of metal clashing as sparks flew. Every single heaven-slaying sword chi was not to be underestimated. Furthermore, the heaven-slaying sword chi was extremely agile and pervasive. Elder Hui Xing was already drenched in sweat after blocking 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Elder Hui Xing thought to himself that he was lucky. Thankfully, there are only 1,000 of them. If Araki Takashi had a deeper comprehension and there were a few more sword chi, I wouldn't have been able to defend against it. Elder Hui Xing heaved a sigh of relief. He had no idea that not long ago, the half-martial ancestors of the Dongfang and Shimin aristocratic families died to Suzumo's heaven-slaying sword chi. At that time, Suzumo released 10,000 sword chi instantly and killed the 2 half-martial ancestors. It was not that Su Zimo had not cultivated to that level. He did not release 10,000 sword chi because he maintained his rationality and did not want to harm Elder Hui Xing's life. After 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi, Su Zimo's figure flashed and arrived before Elder Hui Xing raising the creation lotus platform. He suppressed Elder Hui Xing's head. Clang. In his hurry, Elder Hui Xing did not have time to think and could only raise the fiend's subduing pestle to defend. He had just dealt with 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi and his dermic powers were depleted. Now that he was in a hurry to defend, he did not even have the time to release his blood chi. That single block caused Elder Hui Xing's body to shudder and his arms to go numb. Ah! Elder Hui Xing exclaimed softly and retreated, wanting to increase the distance between them and catch his breath. Unfortunately, Su Zimo's talent in melee combat was terrifying. Even among the experts of this generation, there was no one who could compare to him, let alone those of the same cultivation realm. Su Zimo did not give Elder Hui Xing a chance at all and chased after him like a shadow. Raising the creation Qinglian, he suppressed once more. Helpless, Elder Hui Xing could only raise the fiend's subduing pestle to defend. Clang. There was another deafening sound. Elder Hui Xing's mouth was torn apart and blood flowed as the fiend's subduing pestle flew out of his hands. His teeth fell off from the impact of the power and his mouth was filled with blood with shock. Those injuries were nothing to conjoint body mighty figures, let alone a half-martial ancestor expert. Su Zimo's gaze intensified and he seized the opportunity to catch up, suppressing the creation Qinglian in his hands once more. Elder Hui Xing barely managed to conjure a dermic art to defend. Boom! The creation Qinglian descended and shattered the dermic art. Elder Hui Xing's figure fell rapidly and landed heavily on the ground, creating a human-shaped pit. The surroundings were filled with cracks and dust billowed. The monks stared with their eyes wide open, their throats moving as they unconsciously swallowed their saliva. Patriarchs lived in seclusion and half-martial ancestors were the peak existences of the cultivation world. But now, a half-martial ancestor expert was beaten to such a miserable state by Araki Takashi and was already hammered into the ground. Su Zimo's figure descended as well. The monk's heart skipped a beat. Abbot Hui Shen hollered hurriedly, "Araki Takashi, do you really think that there's no one in Dipankara Monastery who can suppress you? Dipankara Monastery has been passed down through the ages. If we summon our patriarch back, you, Araki Takashi, will definitely die." Abbot Hui Shen gripped a talisman in his hand that could be torn apart at any moment. It was as though tearing the talisman would alarm the Mahayana patriarch of Dipankara Monastery. Su Zimo's expression turned cold as he said slowly, "I merely want to know Mingzhen's whereabouts. Dipankara Monastery refuses to tell me and now, you're using your patriarch to suppress me? Mingzhen was harmed by Dipankara Monastery if you guys are so guilty." The moment he said that, the temperature in the monastery plummeted. It was as though the monks would suffer the wrath of Araki Takashi the next moment. Chapter 1420. Cough cough. Right then, a series of soft coughs sounded from the dust not far away. A figure crawled out of the shattered pit slowly, covered in dust and looking wretched. It was the half-martial ancestor expert, Elder Hui Xing, who was suppressed by Su Zimo just now. "Hui Shen, put away that talisman. There's no need to alarm the patriarch." Elder Hui Xing shook his head. Abbot Hui Shen hesitated for a moment before putting the talisman into his storage bag. However, he was still wary, as though he could take it out at any moment. Elder Hui Xing looked at Su Zimo and said, "Araki Takashi, I didn't want to alarm the patriarch to kill you on account that you want to establish a Dao for the common people. However, you have to remember that you inherited Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery and are considered half a disciple of the Buddhist monasteries. That's precisely the reason why I held back," Su Zimo said indifferently. "Otherwise, do you think that any of these people who attacked me just now, including you, would be able to survive?" Su Zimo had always been decisive in killing. However, this time round, even though he was surrounded and even used a half-martial ancestor expert to bully the weak, he held back and did not kill. Just now, although the battle was intense, none of the monks of Dipankara Monastery died. Even monk Kongru, who provoked him first, was only knocked unconscious by Su Zimo's shout and was not in danger. The monks looked at each other in silence. They knew very well that given Araki Takashi's former reputation, it was already rare for him to be able to control himself so well in his rage. How many Dharma Daojun and conjoint body mighty figures of the sects and factions that went against Araki Takashi in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley? Abbot Huishin could not help but say, "Even so, you can't be unreasonable and barge into our monastery." Fufu. Su Zimo laughed and shook his head. "I did not cross the line when I came to pay my respects. I waited outside Dapamkra Monastery for 6 hours, but you guys did not respond." The monks fell silent. "I wanted to go up the mountain to reason with you, but you stopped me, refused to see me, and even attacked me." Su Zimo had a mocking look on his face as he said, "Look at you now. You've already made your move. You can't beat me, but you want to reason with me? You?" Abbot Huishin was momentarily at a loss for words. He was actually blushing from Su Zimo's words, feeling extremely ashamed. "I only have one question. Where is Mingjin?" Su Zimo's burning gaze landed on Abbot Huishin and the others as he said slowly, "Mingjin was still a titular disciple at the Dao Inheritance Ground. When was his title snatched away?" After pausing for a moment, Su Zimo hesitated for a long time. Finally, he gritted his teeth and asked, "Mingjin, is he dead or alive?" The monks were silent, not saying a word. Abbot Huishin said awkwardly, "Benefactor Araki Takashi, monks don't lie. Mingjin is indeed not in the temple. He has already left." "Where did he go?" Su Zimo asked immediately. Abbot Huishin wanted to say something but hesitated. Su Zimo's heart sank. He had already sensed that something was amiss and said sternly, "Give me an answer as to whether Mingjin is dead or alive." "Heis." Beside him, Elder Huixing sighed and said, "Mingjin should already be dead." Although he was prepared for this, Su Zimo still felt a sense of sorrow when he heard Elder Huixing say it. He could not help but recall the young monk with clear eyes and pure thoughts who was devoted to Buddhism at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. A voice seemed to sound in his ears, "Ming Exen, I'm your senior brother from now on." In the Dao Inheritance Ground, the young monk held a green lamp and came forward without hesitation to fight alongside him. But now, after Elder Huixing's words, everything that had happened in the past had turned into bubbles. "Tell me what's going on?" Su Zimo stood still for a long time before calming down. He took a deep breath and asked slowly, "We'll have to start from 10 years ago." Elder Huixing revealed a reminiscing expression. About 10 years ago, cultivators of Southern Dual Sect discovered an utmost treasure near the sect. Southern Dual Sect? Su Zimo's expression changed. Southern Dual Sect was one of the 108 upper sects. Back when he first entered the intermediate ancient battlefield, he encountered cultivators of Southern Dual Sect. He vaguely remembered that one of them was a female cultivator named Tang Shiyun. Just as he was pondering, he heard Elder Huixing continue, "That supreme treasure is a large piece of carefree wood." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. It was the carefree wood. Monk Yuan Bei had once said that there were 3 sacred trees in the Buddhist monasteries: the carefree tree, Bodhi tree, and Sahara tree. None of the 3 sacred trees were in Tianhuang mainland. According to the ancient records of the Buddhist monasteries, they should be in paradise. Now that he thought about it, paradise in the Buddhist monasteries might be a name for the upper world. In the ancient era, a carefree flower landed on Tianhuang mainland and was obtained by the founder master of Fawam Monastery. It was revered as an utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries and was passed down to this day. Eventually, it landed in his body and became a part of him. As the name suggested, the carefree wood was a section of the carefree tree. The carefree flower was merely a flower on the carefree tree and already possessed many mysterious powers. What was the concept of a huge section of carefree wood? Even conjoint body mighty figures would be tempted by such a huge section of carefree wood. Elder Huixing continued, "For some reason, news of the appearance of this huge section of carefree wood in Southern Dual Sect spread and caused a calamity to befall the sect." Did some sect or faction or peerless expert snatch the carefree wood away? Su Zimo asked with narrowed eyes. Elder Hui Xing shook his head. The one who attacked was not a faction of the cultivation world, but one of the primordial 9 races, the blood vine race. Su Zimo's eyes shone with a murderous intent. Elder Hui Xing said, the true form of the blood vine race is the primordial blood vine. Although they're bloodthirsty, they're still plants. To them, the carefree wood is an absolute tonic and has a fatal attraction. Not long after the news spread, the blood vine army killed their way to Southern Dual Sect. Su Zimo said indifferently, if I'm not wrong, Dipankra Temple should not have helped, right? Elder Hui Xing chuckled bitterly. How can they help? The blood vine race came with a menacing aura and even Dipankra Temple alone can't defend against them. Humph! Su Zimo sneered. Unable to defend against them? That was just an excuse. It was nothing more than the fact that Dipankra Temple was unwilling to get involved because it had nothing to do with them. However, as one of the 6 Buddhist monasteries and a super sect of the cultivation world, Dipankra Temple's attitude was chilling. Su Zimo asked again, what happened after that? What has Mingzhen got to do with this matter? When they heard that, the monks of Dipankra Temple looked ashamed. A moment later, Elder Hui Xing said, we didn't intend to step in. However, Mingzhen insisted on heading to Southern Dual Sect. He said that even if we don't fight the blood vine race head-on, we have to think of a way to save some people. Most of the cultivators of Southern Dual Sect are innocent. Buddha is merciful and saves all living beings. We can't sit idly by. When he heard that, Su Zimo was silent. Amit Ba. The monks lowered their heads in shame and chanted Buddhist proclamations. Chapter 1421. Su Zimo was not surprised that Dipankra Monastery would make such a choice. Actually, be it the sects, factions or cultivators themselves, they could only protect themselves if they wanted to survive in the cruel cultivation world. Although the immortal sects were righteous sects that took on the responsibility of slaying demons and fiends, they might not attack if any great demons or fiends appeared. On the contrary, it was not uncommon for immortals and fiends to join forces for certain benefits. It was the same for the Buddhist monasteries. The Buddha was benevolent and merciful, delivering all living beings. However, how many Buddhists could truly be benevolent and pity all living beings? Dipankra Monastery aside, didn't the other super sects of the South region choose to stay out of this as well? Su Zimo was not surprised that Mingzhen could make such a decision. That was because he had lived with Mingzhen at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 20 years and knew the latter too well. Mingzhen had a pure heart and was devoted to Buddhism. Even in this treacherous environment, it did not change in the slightest. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had once made a vow to save all living beings to attain Bodhi. He swore that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. It was precisely because Mingzhen inherited that vow that he was able to obtain the recognition and inheritance of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in the Tao inheritance ground. If Southern Dual Sect was taken over by the Bloodvine race, how was the danger there any different from hell? Su Zimo looked at Elder Hui Xing, Abbot Hui Shen and the other monks and said slowly, Mingzhen's cultivation realm is indeed inferior to yours. However, you guys will never be able to compare to his breadth of mind. The monks sighed and lowered their heads without arguing. Su Zimo heaved a long sigh of relief and asked again, and then? Mingzhen insisted on going and I could only remind him not to take any risks. If he saw that things weren't going well, he had to leave as soon as possible. However, Abbot Huishan hesitated for a moment and his eyes dimmed as he sighed. However, Mingzhen never came out after entering Southern Dual Sect. Su Zimo's expression turned cold as he questioned loudly, Mingzhen's titular disciple got into trouble in the South region and Dipankra Monastery did nothing? Abbot Huishan wanted to say something but it turned into a long sigh in the end. Mingzhen was the one who refused to listen. A monk at the side muttered softly, "What did you say?" Su Zimo glared coldly at the man and shouted. The monk was so scared that his heart trembled. He immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and shut his mouth. He didn't even dare to look at Su Zimo. Elder Hui Xing sighed softly and said, I know that there are some words that Benefactor Araki Takashi cannot accept, but there is nothing we can do. I heard that the young master of the Bloodvine race led an army to attack Southern Dual Sect this time round, and there are thousands of them. As for the young master of the Bloodvine race, Teng Lingzi, he's the strongest monster incarnate of the Bloodvine race. Although he's only at the conjoint body realm, I'm not his match. Hee hee. Su Zimo could not help sneering and said, as a super sect, doesn't Dipankra Temple have a Mahayana ancestor? If a half-martial ancestor couldn't do it, then he would ask the old ancestor to come out. Just now, aren't you going to ask the ancestor to kill me? What? You have the guts to kill me, but you don't have the guts to kill other races? No. Elder Hui Xing shook his head. If we ask the ancestor, we can naturally suppress the Bloodvine race of Southern Dual Sect. However, that will definitely alarm the ancestor of the Bloodvine race. At that time, it will be a disaster for Dipankra Temple. Then we'll ask the emperor to come out. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, Dipankra Temple has been around for ages. Don't we have an emperor? Elder Hui Xing was silent for a long time before sending a voice transmission slowly. Benefactor Araki Takashi, it's extremely difficult to become an emperor. In the history of Dipankra Temple, there were indeed emperors. However, in this generation, there were no patriarchs conferred the title of emperor. This is a secret of Dipankra Temple. Benefactor Araki Takashi, please don't spread it. Su Zimo was silent. The fact that Elder Hui Xing could tell him such a secret showed that he had indeed made such a choice after careful consideration. Elder Hui Xing sent another voice transmission. We're not alone. We bear the fate of the entire Dipankra Temple on our shoulders. If we save Ming Zhen and provoke the ancestor of the Bloodvine race or even the emperor of the race, the legacy of Dipankra Temple will be severed and will be sinners of Dipankra Temple. Although Su Zimo did not approve of Dipankra Temple's choice in his heart, he could not criticize them anymore. Between Ming Zhen and the legacy of the sect and the thousands of monks of the sect, Dipankra Temple chose the latter to protect the legacy of the sect and the monks under them. It was hard to say if that was the right choice. At the very least, Su Zimo did not agree. Today, if they took a step back in front of the foreign race, they would definitely push their luck. Giving in blindly was not a solution. However, if Dipankra Temple were to join forces with other super sects because of this, they would probably not receive any response. Which sect or faction would provoke the primordial 9 races for no reason and invite trouble upon themselves? Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, since that's the case, why are you guys being so secretive? You just have to make this clear. Even if you guys feel guilty, you don't have to stop me from ascending the mountain or even fight, right? Dipankra Temple chose to sacrifice Ming Zhen to protect the sect. The monks of Dipankra Temple naturally felt guilty and were embarrassed to face Su Zimo. Even so, Dipankra Temple's reaction was a little too extreme. This, Abbot Huishin hesitated for a moment and said embarrassedly, Patron Araki Takashi, you might not know this, but after the news of you being alive spread, the Protoss, which Heavenly Eye, Golden Crow, Bloodvine and Rakshasa races all issued kill orders for you. Kill order? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. He had vaguely read about this badge in some ancient books. In the primordial era, the kill order was the most threatening death badge of the primordial 9 races. Once the kill order was issued, the primordial races would spare no effort to kill the other party. Anyone who received this badge was equivalent to a dead man. In the ancient era, only the emperors of the human race received the kill order of the primordial races. Of course, some emperors were indeed killed by the primordial races. For existences like the eternal human emperor, even the kill order of the primordial races could not do anything to him. Ever since the ancient war, the kill order of the primordial races had not appeared. No one would have thought that the badge would descend in this life. Furthermore, the primordial 6 races had all issued kill orders. The order states that anyone who dares to take in Araki Takashi will definitely be massacred by the primordial races. Abbot Huishin said, Patron Araki Takashi, please forgive me. I'm afraid there's no sect or faction in Tianhuang mainland that would dare to have anything to do with you, let alone Dipamkara Temple. Su Zimo understood. If Dipamkara Temple did not stop him from ascending the mountain, countless experts of the primordial races would descend upon Dipamkara Temple once news of this spread. However, if Dipamkara Temple fought with Su Zimo, it would naturally not attract the hostility of the primordial races. Therefore, once Su Zimo forced his way up the mountain, Dipamkara Temple would attack no matter what to escape from the killing intent of the primordial races. Chapter 1422. The primordial 6 races sure think highly of me, Su Zimo laughed without any fear in his eyes. Patron Araki Takashi, I'll say one more thing. You must not underestimate your opponent. The moment the kill order is issued, they will not rest until you're dead. Elder Hui Xing said earnestly, the various races will send their top experts to look for you, and their combat strength is definitely not something the primordial races of Heaven and Earth Valley can compare to. If the experts of the primordial races cannot succeed, they will send even stronger people until you're killed. Even if it's Misty Peak, 100 Refinement sect will definitely not be able to defend against it, let alone you. In the ancient era, there were even many emperors of the human race who could not withstand the kill order and died in the hands of the primordial races. I got it. Thank you for your reminder, fellow Taoist. Su Zimo nodded and turned to leave. Now that he had asked about Ming Zhen, there was no need for him to be entangled with the monks of Dipamkara Temple. Furthermore, now that he had been ordered to be killed by the primordial 6 races, Dipamkara Temple would definitely avoid him. Why should he stay here and annoy them? When they saw Su Zimo leave, the monks of Dipamkara Temple heaved a sigh of relief. Only Elder Hui Xing frowned slightly with a worried expression. He could not help but ask, Patron Araki Takashi, where are you going? Southern Dual Sect, Su Zimo replied indifferently. Ah! All the monks were shocked and cried out in alarm. Araki Takashi was truly audacious. Instead of hiding after being ordered to be killed by the primordial races, he was going to deliver himself to them? Elder Hui Xing hesitated for a moment before persuading, Patron Araki Takashi, forgive me for being direct. Right now, the Bloodvine race has occupied a radius of 50 kilometers around 6-Star Mountain of Southern Dual Sect. There are probably more than 10,000 people of the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain. With the young master of the Bloodvine race, Ting Lingzi, holding down the fort personally, even the super sects and factions will find it difficult to fight against them, let alone you. What Elder Hui Xing said was indeed the truth. Given the current strength of the Bloodvine race in Southern Dual Sect, unless the patriarch of the human race appeared or the super sects of the southern region joined forces, Su Zimo was truly weak alone. That's right. Ming Zhen is already dead. Patron Desolate Marshal, there's no hurry to take revenge. Abbot Hui Shen persuaded as well. How do you know that Ming Zhen is dead? Su Zimo stopped in his tracks and asked instead. It has already been 10 years. Ming Zhen must have died long ago after falling into the hands of the Bloodvine race. How can he still be alive? Abbot Hui Shen laughed bitterly. Ming Zhen is my friend, as well as my senior brother. Since he's in the Southern Dual Sect, I want to see him dead or alive. Su Zimo's face was filled with killing intent as he said murderously, if Ming's true body dies, the Bloodvine race of Southern Dual Sect will have to accompany him in death. With that, Su Zimo left Dipamkara Temple without looking back. Patron Araki Takashi. Elder Hui Xing looked at Su Zimo's back view and reminded him once more, there's a high chance that there's a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain. You have to be careful. Su Zimo's movement technique was extremely fast, and he disappeared from the sights of the monks in the blink of an eye. Elder, what's the point of reminding him of that? A conjoint body monk said, Araki Takashi is obstinate and stubborn. It's difficult to distinguish between good and evil. Since he's bent on sending himself to his death, we've already done our best to explain the pros and cons to him. Why bother persuading him? That's right. Even if Elder tries to persuade him, he might not appreciate it. Another monk added. Elder Hui Xing frowned and turned around. Looking at the two monks who just now spoke, he said in a deep voice, "Don't forget he's Araki Takashi. The Araki Takashi who founded the Wu Dao and brought blessings to all living beings. Such merit is enough for his name to be passed down through history and affect all generations. Even the ancient emperors could not compare to him. We're already feeling guilty for not helping him. How can you guys have the cheek to say such things?" After all, Elder Hui Xing was in charge of punishment and had always been strict. Just now, although he was suppressed by Araki Takashi, he still had a terrifying might in Dipamkara Temple. The two monks lowered their heads and did not dare to say anything. "The two of you, reflect on your mistakes and copy the Heart Sutra 10,000 times." Elder Hui Xing said in a deep voice, "Not one less." The two monks did not dare to argue. They lowered their heads and admitted their mistakes before leaving dejectedly. Elder Hui Xing looked in the direction Su Zimo left and sighed softly. "I hope the heavens protect him." After Su Zimo left Dipamkara Temple, he took out a map and determined the direction before heading towards Southern Dual Sect. The primordial 6 races had issued the kill order. Actually, the one who was truly in danger was Qinglian's true body. He had 3 true bodies. Right now, his Dragon Phoenix true body was in the ancestral Dragon Land. Unless the primordial 6 races joined forces and attacked the Dragon Bone Valley with their armies, the Dragon Phoenix true body would not be in any danger. As for Wu Dao's true body, it was outside the 3 realms and not in the 5 elements. Not many people knew of its existence. Furthermore, Wu Dao's true body was in seclusion in Pingyang town and cultivating. It was difficult for the primordial 6 races to find him. However, Qinglian's true body was different. If Qinglian's true body were to walk around Tianhuang mainland, she would definitely leave behind all sorts of traces and be exposed easily. At that time, the experts of the primordial races would definitely look for her. It would be fine if they were at the conjoint body realm. However, it would be troublesome if they were half-martial ancestors of the primordial races. Qinglian's true body had just entered the conjoint body realm and could suppress half-martial ancestors of the human race. However, against half-martial ancestors of the primordial races, the outcome was unpredictable. Teng Lingzi of the Bloodvine race was already a little troublesome. If there was truly a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race guarding 6-Star Mountain of Southern Dual Sect, it would indeed be quite dangerous this time round. Of course, no matter what, Su Zimo had to investigate Southern Dual Sect. In Su Zimo's opinion, the reason why the Bloodvine race attacked and destroyed Southern Dual Sect and occupied 6-Star Mountain was not solely because of the appearance of the Carefree Wood. The Carefree Wood might just be an opportunity. In this generation, there were signs that the primordial races were ready to make a move. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, the appearance of the Rakshasa and Protoss was a start. Later on, there was the calamity of the Witch Gu in the North region. The Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley in the Middle Continent. Even the Battle of Penglai Island. At that time, Su Zimo instinctively thought that Penglai Island and the Golden Crow race had joined forces to set a trap to kill him. However, on second thought, there was another possibility. Penglai Island was already under the control of the Golden Crow race. According to Elder Hui Xing, not every super sect had a ruler overseeing it. If there were no emperors, even Mahayana patriarchs would not be able to defend against the primordial races. Think about the outcome of Phwa Monastery and Daming Monastery of the North region 10,000 years ago. Even with a Dharma overlord around at that time, they were still destroyed by an ancestor realm dragon. The difference between them was obvious. If Su Zimo's deduction was right, there was a high chance that the actions of the primordial races would increase in number and scale in the future. The primordial races would definitely not be willing to stay in a corner. When the patriarchs of the primordial races or even the emperors of the primordial races walked out, the situation of Tianhuang mainland would be completely changed. Chapter 1423. 6-Star Mountain. It was one of the more famous places in the South region that was filled with spirit. The 6 main peaks were Tianfu Peak, Tianliang Peak, Tianji Peak, Tiantong Peak, Tianxiang Peak, and 7 Kills Peak. The 6 main peaks corresponded to the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper and resonated with heaven and earth with rich spirit chi. Many years ago, the ancestral master of Southern Dipper sect traveled here and discovered this blessed grotto heaven. Since then, he established a sect here and the sect expanded rapidly with many famous cultivators. But now, the region of 6-Star Mountain was blood-red and filled with vines with human faces. They were dense and sinister. It was a hellish scene. The blood-colored vines had spread rapidly for the past 10 years and had already occupied the region within 100 kilometers of 6-Star Mountain. Apart from the blood-colored vines, there were no other living beings within the radius of 100 kilometers. The vegetation was withered. The barren land was filled with withered bones. One of the primordial 9 races, the blood vine race. Among the primordial 9 races, this was the only race that was able to become a primordial race with the origin of plants. That was because the blood vine race was the most domineering among the plants. As long as a single blood vine grew in an area, the nutrients of the other plants would be sucked dry until they withered. Furthermore, the blood vine race was extremely savage and bloodthirsty. If any living being stepped into the territory of the blood vine race, their flesh would be devoured and only their bones would be spat out. Even in the primordial era, the habitat of the other primordial races did not allow a single blood vine race to appear. 7 Kills Peak. In a palace that was covered in blood vines, a young man in a crimson-red robe sat on a high seat. He held a blood-red gourd in his left hand, and below him was a throne that was piled up from piles of bones. A large circle of human skulls surrounded the throne and were stained with blood. This person was the young master of the blood vine race, Tenglingzi. At that moment, more than 10 horrified cultivators floated in front of Tenglingzi. All of them were pale and trembled in fear. Although the cultivators were dirty, one could vaguely tell from their robes that they were cultivators of Southern Dipper sect. Fufufu. Tenglingzi looked at the dozen or so cultivators in front of him and smiled evilly. He said softly, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be good." As he spoke, more than 10 blood-colored vines that were as thick as an arm extended from Tenglingzi's wide blood-red robe and coiled towards the cultivators. Woo-woo. These self-cultivators' eyes were filled with fear. They struggled with all their might, but they couldn't move or even speak. They could only let out a series of whimpering sounds. The 10 or so cultivators could only watch the thick, crimson blood vines approach them, unable to resist at all. This process was simply an enormous torture for the dozen or so cultivators. A female cultivator couldn't take it anymore. Her mind collapsed and she fainted on the spot. The rest of the cultivators were also trembling as they looked at Tenglingzi pleadingly. Tenglingzi had a complacent expression on his face. He enjoyed the fear these blood food had for him. In his eyes, these cultivators were food. It was his food. In the primordial era, the human race was the most inferior and weak race. They could only be enslaved and reduced to food. The more fearful the blood food was, the more excited the blood-robed young man was. As one of the primordial 9 races, the blood vine race had a strong bloodline. However, they could only stay in a corner for the past few years. Tenglingzi had had enough. Thankfully, the fortune of the human race had come to an end and the era of the primordial races had arrived. "Are you afraid? Are you afraid?" Tenglingzi smiled gently. "But I've still got to eat you guys." As he spoke, the disc-shaped human faces at the top of the blood-colored vines suddenly split open, revealing crisscrossing sharp fangs within with a torrential stench. Suddenly, a blood vine popped out and opened its mouth, biting the head of a cultivator. The vines wriggled and swallowed him bit by bit. The rest of the cultivators were already scared out of their wits after witnessing the scene. Some of the cultivators' life force was draining rapidly and their eyes dimmed. That person was scared to death. Sigh. Tenglingzi sighed. "I've got to eat you as soon as possible. Your flesh won't be fresh once you're dead." A blood vine opened its mouth and swallowed the cultivator. A moment later, the blood vine that swallowed the cultivator at the beginning opened its mouth once more and spat out a pile of bones stained with warm blood. The remaining cultivators were in despair. They knew that they could not escape their fate of being devoured. Before long, more than 10 cultivators were devoured by the blood-robed young man. Teng Lingzi let out a long breath of air and licked his scarlet tongue in enjoyment. The blood-colored calabash in his left palm turned even brighter and more sinister. Young master. Right then, a Bloodvine clansman at the bottom of the palace said in a deep voice, "There's not much blood food left on 6-Star Mountain. It's probably only enough for you to eat for a year." "Seems like I've got to go out and catch some blood food." Teng Lingzi twisted his neck. "The blood food of Southern Dual Sect is really nothing. It's only been 10 years and it's gone." As he said that, Teng Lingzi smacked his lips, as though he was reminiscing about the aftertaste. "Actually, there's a temple in the southern region with plenty of blood food. Furthermore, they're all of superior quality." Teng Lingzi narrowed his eyes and said faintly, "Young master, are you referring to Depamkra Temple?" The Bloodvine clansman below asked. "Yes," Teng Lingzi nodded. Depamkra Temple is one of the 6 major Buddhist monasteries of the human cultivation world. Given our strength, we might not be able to take it down. The Bloodvine clansman analyzed. Teng Lingzi chuckled. "If we want to take down Depamkra Temple, we'll naturally have to invite my father." "That's right. If the clan leader takes action, there won't be any suspense." The Bloodvine clansman nodded. Teng Lingzi smiled. "Actually, Depamkra Temple is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Their titular disciple has been in my hands for 10 years and no one has dared to come to Depamkra Temple. I'm guessing that no one from Depamkra Temple will be conferred the title of emperor in this generation." "Young master is wise," the Bloodvine clansman hurriedly flattered before asking, "Young master and clan leader, when are you going to take down Depamkra Temple?" "There's no hurry," Teng Lingzi replied indifferently. "Once I absorb all the power of the carefree wood, I might be able to become a half-martial ancestor or even step into the ancestor realm. At that time, I'll be able to flatten Depamkra Temple without my father's help. After flattening Depamkra Temple, it'll be the 3 aristocratic families. At that time, the southern region will be under the control of our Bloodvine race." The Bloodvine clansman was rather excited as well as he continued. "Yes," Teng Lingzi nodded. "That's all for the future. Let's put it aside for now. Right? Is there any news of Araki Takashi? I heard that Araki Takashi is the body of the creation Qinglian. If we capture him, he'll be the best food and a great tonic." "Not at the moment," the Bloodvine clansman replied. "If there's any news, I'll definitely report it immediately." "Yes," Teng Lingzi instructed. "The other primordial races have also issued kill orders. Keep a close eye on them. If Araki Takashi appears, we can't let the Protoss and Heavenly Eye race beat us to it. I'll definitely be the first to eat Araki Takashi's flesh." Chapter 1424. In less than 10 days after leaving Depamkra Temple, Su Zimo arrived in the vicinity of 6-Star Mountain. From afar, 6-Star Mountain was dyed in blood. Menacing vines crawled all over the mountains and rivers in a dense manner. Blood-colored gourds grew on the vines and swayed with the wind, shimmering with a sinister sanguine light. Su Zimo's expression was cold. He did not hide his tracks and flew through the air, speeding towards 6-Star Mountain. Now that he was at the conjoint body realm and Qinglian's true body had been reborn, there were not many people in Tianhuang mainland who could suppress him without the Patriarch. There was no need for him to change his appearance and hide his identity. He was Araki Takashi. The reason why he charged into 6-Star Mountain today was to cause trouble for the Bloodvine race. The moment Su Zimo arrived at the periphery of 6-Star Mountain, the Bloodvines sensed the blood chi in his body and crawled over. To think that there would be a cultivator who doesn't know what's good for him to come here. Gaga gaga. What a strong bloodline. I'll be able to take human form after devouring him. Some of the Bloodvine race members were excited. The Bloodvines outside 6-Star Mountain did not have high cultivation realms and could not even take human form. Naturally, they could not tell Su Zimo's true state. In the blink of an eye, at least hundreds of blood-colored vines coiled towards Su Zimo in a frenzy, wanting to drink his blood and eat his flesh. Without even looking at the blood vines, Su Zimo conjured hand seals with both hands and channeled his essence spirit. Swoosh. Suddenly, 3 balls of flames of different colors rose beside Su Zimo. Scarlet, immortal Tao fire. Gold, Buddhist Tao fire. Black, fiend Tao fire. That was a dharmic art from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. The 3 Tao fires revolved around Su Zimo and spun slowly, forming a flame barrier. As soon as the blood vines rushed up and revealed their bloody mouths, they crashed into the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. Now that Su Zimo was at the conjoint body realm, even some conjoint body realm blood vines would not dare to take the power of the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lamp head-on, let alone the low-level blood vine race. After all, the blood vine race was a type of plant. Although they were the overlords of plants and trees, they were not without weaknesses. Plants and trees were most afraid of fire. As for the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra that Su Zimo cultivated, his attainments in flames were extremely strong. The 3 Tao flames that he condensed were even more terrifying. When these blood-red vines collided with him, they instantly turned into ashes. Creak, creak, creak. When the vines were reduced to ashes, the main bodies of the blood vine race actually let out a sharp cry. The other vines on their bodies wanted to shrink back to avoid the 3 flames. However, how ferocious were the 3 Tao fires? How could these low-level blood vines resist them? Any spark that landed on their bodies would ignite. The flames spread along the vines and spread to the entire body of the blood-red vine. In the blink of an eye, a complete blood-red vine could be burned to ashes. Su Zimo's expression was cold. Along the way from outside 6-Star Mountain, he did not stop at all and charged in with the 3 Tao fires surrounding him. Everywhere he passed, flames surged and countless blood vine race members were buried in the sea of flames. Of course, those blood vine race members did not have high cultivation realms and could not take human form. They could only watch helplessly as the flames descended and burned them to ashes. Who is it? How dare you trespass into the territory of my blood vine race? An expert of the blood vine race who had taken human form appeared and stood in midair. He looked at the flames not far away and questioned loudly with a furious expression. Although this blood vine race member could take human form, his cultivation realm was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. Blood vine race's territory? Su Zimo scoffed coldly and did not even look at him, merely flicking his fingers casually. A sword chi burst forth. A white streak tore through the void and entered the glabella of the blood vine Tao Lord instantly. That person's eyes widened in disbelief. The sword chi was way too fast and he did not even have time to dodge. A single slash. It pierced through his sea of consciousness and shattered his primordial spirit. The corpse of the Tao Lord of the blood vine race fell from midair. Seeing this scene, the blood vine race that originally wanted to go forward were all shocked. They all moved and fled towards the 6 main peaks. Not good, there's an invasion. Many blood vine race members shouted as they fled. Su Zimo advanced at an extremely fast speed and approached the 6 main peaks before long. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's expression changed as he sensed something and looked over. Not far away at the foot of the mountain, there was a large empty space surrounded by blood vines that formed a fence. There were many cultivators gathered inside. There were more than 10,000 of them. Or rather, those cultivators could no longer be considered as humans. He did not know what those cultivators had experienced to be tortured to the point that they were neither human nor ghost. Every single cultivator was dressed in tattered clothes and could vaguely make out that they were the dermic robes of Southern Dual Sect. Those cultivators had withered, yellow faces and dispirited expressions. Every single one of them had an iron hoop around their necks with a gigantic chain that was chained to the blood vine fence. Those people had empty gazes and numb expressions. Even when they caught sight of Su Zimo in midair through the gaps in the fence, their expressions did not change and their eyes were dead. Su Zimo's eyes widened in disbelief as he thought of a possibility and his body trembled slightly. Is the blood vine clan raising the cultivators of the human race as livestock? Su Zimo was enraged and his face was filled with killing intent as 2 flames seemed to burn in his eyes. He had heard about the tragic fate of the human race in the primordial era in some ancient books or from the mouths of others. Humans were lowly and weak. They were enslaved by the 10,000 races and were even treated as food and offerings by other races. When he heard that, Su Zimo felt emotional as well. But now that he witnessed it personally, he truly felt the despair that the humans of the primordial era endured. It was the sorrow of being unable to see the light of day and being unable to fight back. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo's figure flashed and he arrived outside the fence in the blink of an eye. A spark flickered from his fingertip and burned the fence to ashes before long. When the Southern Dual Sect cultivators saw Su Zimo, all of them had fearful expressions and huddled into a ball like frightened birds. A heaven-slaying sword chi shot out from Su Zimo's fingertip and shuttled through the crowd with an endless sharpness. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing filled the air as sparks flew. In just more than 10 breaths, the chains on the cultivators were severed by the heaven-slaying sword chi. However, even though the surrounding fences were gone and the chains on their bodies were severed, those cultivators did not know how to escape. It was as though they were already numb. Su Zimo surveyed the crowd and searched twice carefully with a disappointed expression. Initially, he was hoping that Ming Zhen would be in the crowd. Unfortunately, he found nothing after searching. Fellow Taoist Su? Right then, a weak and timid voice sounded from the crowd. Chapter 1425. Su Zimo looked in the direction of the voice. The voice was way too soft as a mosquito. If not for his strong hearing, he might not have noticed it. Su Zimo's gaze landed on a female cultivator in the crowd. The female cultivator had disheveled hair and was curled into a ball. Hiding in the crowd, her eyes were livelier than others. You are... Su Zimo's gaze narrowed as though he recalled something. He probed, Tang Shiyun? The female cultivator nodded repeatedly when she heard that name. The female cultivator wiped away the dirt on her face haphazardly, revealing her facial features. Although they were still dirty, they were recognizable. It's really you? Su Zimo was surprised. To think that he would be able to meet an old friend in Southern Dual Sect. Tang Shiyun stood up, as though she wanted to walk towards Su Zimo. However, she hesitated for a moment in fear. Come over, I won't hurt you. Su Zimo nodded. Upon hearing that, Tang Shiyun mustered her courage and walked out of the crowd. The number one beauty of Southern Dual Sect back then was no longer elegant. Back when the two of them first met in the ancient battlefield, they were both at the Jin Dan realm. But now, Su Zimo had already entered the conjoint body realm and was an omnipotent mighty figure. However, Tang Shiyun's cultivation was only at the nascent soul realm. The gap between the two of them was getting wider. In the ancient battlefield back then, how many of the hundreds of thousands of paragons could truly catch up to Su Zimo? 10 years ago, did you see a monk from Dapamkra Monastery? Su Zimo looked at Tang Shiyun and asked in a deep voice. Tang Shiyun recalled for a moment and asked, did the monk look young and hold a green lamp in his hands? That's right. Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he asked, where is he? Is he still alive? Back in the Dao inheritance ground, Ming Zhen appeared and fought alongside him. His destiny-dermic weapon was a green lamp. 10 years ago, it was all thanks to this monk that some cultivators from my Southern Dual Sect managed to escape. Tang Shiyun sighed softly. However, this monk's cultivation was insufficient and could not defeat the young master of the blood vine race and was suppressed by him. So many years have passed, I'm sure he's long dead. Su Zimo slightly clenched his fist, his expression cold. Su Dao. Senior Su, are you here to save us? Tang Shiyun realized that the difference between the two of them was too great. It was inappropriate for her to continue addressing him as fellow cultivator. Thus, she quickly corrected herself and asked anxiously. Su Zimo nodded and took out some elixirs. He placed them in a storage bag and handed them to Tang Shiyun. Distribute these elixirs and leave this place as soon as possible. Tang Shiyun's hands trembled as she took the bag of holding. Tears began to flow out of her eyes. However, the other cultivators were still expressionless as they stared at this scene. They didn't feel the slightest bit of joy from seeing the light of day again. These people, Su Zimo looked at the expressions of the cultivators and felt a sense of sorrow. Tang Shiyun smiled bitterly. 10 years ago, the blood vine race killed their way here. Our southern dual sex patriarch died in battle along with 3 mighty figures and a half-martial ancestor. However, we couldn't defend against the invasion of the blood vine race army. In less than a day, the entire southern dual sect fell into the control of the blood vine race. Apart from the few hundred people that the monk helped to escape, the other hundreds of thousands of sect disciples were reared as livestock by the blood vine race just so that they could eat fresh meat. All these years, the blood vine race has locked us up here and sealed our dermic powers. We can't even commit suicide. When he heard that, the killing intent in Su Zimo's eyes was on the verge of bursting out. Tang Shiyun said sorrowfully, for the past 10 years, the blood vine race would eat up to 100 southern dual sect cultivators every day. No matter how we begged and struggled, it was to no avail. We could only watch as our fellow sect members around us decreased bit by bit. That's hundreds of thousands of fellow sect members. Right now, there's only slightly more than 10,000 of us left. Tang Shiyun could not hold on any longer and broke down mentally, crying out loud. Every day, these cultivators opened their eyes and did not know if they could survive the day or if they would be eaten as food. Initially, we still had a glimmer of hope. Tang Shiyun's face was filled with tears as she smiled bitterly. After all, hundreds of our fellow sect members escaped. They would seek help from other upper sects and super sections. Perhaps, there might be experts of the human race who would come and save us from our misery. However, we waited and waited. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, no one came. Finally, we gave up. Su Zimo was silent. He clenched his fists tightly and his knuckles were incomparably pale because he used too much strength. Even if the cultivators of Southern Dual Sect sought help, no sect or faction would rush over to save them from their misery. Who would offend a huge enemy like the Bloodvine race for some random cultivators? The human race had led a peaceful life for too long. They no longer had the sharpness of the ancient era, the courage to fight against the primordial races and the unyielding tenacity of steel. The ancient sages of the human race, be it low-level cultivators or mighty figure patriarchs, were all righteous and took care of one another with utmost sincerity. If they were to witness this scene today, they would probably shed tears of sorrow and regret. Most of the current cultivators had even forgotten about the hardships that the human race experienced in the primordial era. They had forgotten that in the ancient war, the deaths of patriarchs, emperors, and countless experts of the human race fought with all their might in exchange for the eternal peace of the human race. Even a super sect like Dipankara Monastery, one of the 6 major Buddhist monasteries, was taking care of itself. Who would stand out to save everyone from Southern Dual Sect? I'm a little late. Su Zimo looked at everyone from Southern Dual Sect and said slowly, however, everyone, don't worry. With me, Araki Takashi, guarding this place today, no one will be able to hurt you guys. Apart from a few people who had a glimmer of hope in their eyes, the rest were still lifeless with numb expressions. Fellow Taoists, he is Araki Takashi, the famous Tao Lord Araki Takashi who founded the Wu Dao. Tang Shiyun was trapped here and her understanding of Su Zimo was still based on the rumors she had heard previously. She did not know that Su Zimo was already a conjoint body mighty figure. He was the one who suppressed the Rakshasa and Protoss in Myriad Phenomenon City and saved the paragons of the human race. Now that Tao Lord Araki Takashi is here, we have a chance of escaping alive. Tang Shiyun looked at everyone from Southern Dual Sect and took out elixirs from her storage bag, passing them to the cultivators as she said. Most people were indifferent to it. What's the use of Dharma Dao Jun? Even half-martial ancestors are dead. They're all dead. Ha! A cultivator laughed maniacally. Su Zimo had a sorrowful expression. Although these people were still alive, they were no different from dead people. Tao Lord Araki Takashi, please kill me and give me a quick death. For me, that's the greatest relief. A cultivator kowtowed to Su Zimo and begged softly. Tao Lord Araki Takashi, Please grant us death. A large group of cultivators knelt down. When he saw that, Su Zimo's eyes turned red and he had nowhere to vent his anger and sorrow. Eventually, he reared his head and roared into the skies. Bloodvine race, I want you guys to pay with your blood. Chapter 1426. Pure persuasion and comfort could no longer rid the cultivators of Southern Dual sect of their fear. That fear had been ingrained in them for the past 10 years. Only a true massacre and the fresh blood of the Bloodvine race could stimulate these Southern Dual sect cultivators. It made them realize that although the Bloodvine race was a primordial race, they were not invincible. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as dermic powers surged, and he conjured hand seals with both hands. The 3 Dao fires that were initially revolving around him gathered rapidly, forming a tricolored flame that emanated a shuddering aura. Samadhi Dao fire. Everyone from Southern Dual sect looked at the dancing flame with fearful expressions and did not dare to make a sound. Go! Su Zimo rose into the air slowly and threw the tricolored flame in his hands in the direction of 6-Star Mountain. At the same time, an essence spirit fire burst forth from his glabella and entered the tricolored flame. The flames shone brightly. Kacharati Dao fire. Now that Su Zimo had cultivated to the conjoint body realm, even half-martial ancestors could not withstand the might of the Kacharati Dao fire. However, at that moment he was already filled with killing intent and wanted to kill all the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain. He had no intention of holding back and was going all out. Swoosh! Raging flames surged. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and dermic powers surged as the Kacharati Dao fire spread and burned in all directions. Some of the Bloodvine race that could not take human form could only watch helplessly as the Kacharati Dao fire burned over and turned into ashes in their struggles and screams. Some of the Bloodvine race transformed into human form and wanted to escape. However, the Kacharati Dao fire was extremely powerful and they could not defend against a single spark that landed on their bodies. Su Zimo pushed his essence spirit to its limits. The Kacharati Dao fire spread at an extremely fast speed as well. Some of the Bloodvine race that were slower to react were caught up by the Kacharati Dao fire and burned into ashes. In the blink of an eye, 6-Star Mountain was engulfed in a sea of flames. Everyone from Southern Dual sect widened their eyes and mouths, speechless. This scene had a huge impact on them. Originally, in their impression, more than half of the Bloodvine race that was ferocious, tyrannical, bloodthirsty, and invincible had actually been burned to death by this fire. Although most of those who were burned to death by the Kacharati Dao fire were low-level Bloodvine tribe members, the Kacharati Dao fire was a rare sight to behold. Even so, a glimmer of hope appeared in the eyes of the Southern Dual sect. The Kacharati Dao fire spread continuously and enveloped the entire 6-Star Mountain. However, when the fire reached the foot of the 6 main peaks, it seemed to be obstructed by some powerful force and was unable to envelop the 6 main peaks. There were still thousands of Bloodvine clansmen who fled to the 6 main peaks to hide. Su Zimo's expression was grave. He clearly understood that the true battle had only just begun. The top experts of the primordial races must be guarding the 6 main peaks. Boom, boom, boom. One after another, powerful figures soared into the sky, their auras unbridled. The conjoint body mighty figure of the Bloodvine race had appeared. Su Zimo swept his gaze and in the blink of an eye, more than 20 conjoint body mighty figures appeared in midair. Their blood chi surged and a massive pressure descended. Under the suppression of the spirit consciousnesses of more than 20 conjoint body mighty figures, the Kacharati Dao fire was greatly suppressed and the flames flickered, as though they could be extinguished at any moment. When dermic arts were condensed, their might would naturally be released to their limits. Su Zimo had spread the Kacharati Dao fire to such a large area and its might was already greatly reduced. Even a conjoint body mighty figure of the Bloodvine race could suppress it. In midair, the number of conjoint body mighty figures of the Bloodvine race was still increasing. Before long, there were already 50 of them. There were already 50 conjoint body mighty figures gathered on 6-Star Mountain. One could imagine how terrifying the foundation of the Bloodvine race, one of the primordial 9 races, was. If it was just these mighty figures of the Bloodvine race, they were nothing in Suzumo's eyes. However, he could vaguely sense that there were even stronger existences hidden in Six-Star Mountain that were watching him from a certain corner. Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. Furthermore, there was a high chance that there was more than one of them. If a huge battle breaks out later, leave this place with your fellow sect members as soon as possible. Suzumo sent a voice transmission to Tang Shiyun secretly. There were more experts of the Bloodvine race on Six-Star Mountain than he had imagined. If a huge battle broke out, he would not be able to fend for himself and would not be able to protect Tang Shiyun and the others. Who are you? How dare you barge into the territory of our Bloodvine race and kill us? A mighty figure of the Bloodvine race hollered. Suzumo sneered. Didn't your Bloodvine race issue an order to kill me? You don't even recognize me? The expressions of the Bloodvine race in midair changed. Araki Takashi. Some of the Bloodvine race members hollered softly. Right then, a laughter sounded from 7 Kills Peak. A figure in blood-colored robes rose slowly and stuck out his scarlet tongue to lick his lips, saying leisurely, "Truly, I've searched high and low only to find it by sheer luck. Araki Takashi, you've saved me some effort by coming knocking on my door." Young master. When the conjoint body mighty figures of the Bloodvine race saw this person, they bowed one after another. You must be Teng Lingzi. Suzumo's expression was cold as he looked at the blood-robed youth without concealing the killing intent in his eyes. That's me, Teng Lingzi smiled sinisterly. But mighty figure Araki Takashi, the strongest monster incarnate in history, has heard of my name as well? You were the one who killed Mingzhen? Suzumo asked coldly. Who's Mingzhen? Teng Lingzi shook his head. I've never bothered to remember the names of ants of the human race. What a waste of energy. Who would remember the name of the food they ate? Teng Lingzi smiled gently at Suzumo. There were still streaks of blood between the gaps of his teeth, resembling a malevolent ghost from hell. Mingzhen? As though he thought of something, Teng Lingzi raised his brow and asked, Are you talking about a young monk? Suzumo narrowed his eyes. When Teng Lingzi saw the change in Suzumo's expression, he nodded. Seems like it's him. The young monk's blood chi is strong and incomparably pure. I'll keep him in my blood calabash and refine him. As Teng Lingzi said that, he took out a blood-colored calabash and held it in his palm. This blood calabash is my destiny dermic weapon. Even half-martial ancestors of the human race won't be able to live for more than a year after being kept in. However, this young monk is truly impressive. He's merely at the Dharma characteristic realm, but he managed to survive in my blood calabash until now. Suzumo's eyes lit up in delight. Mingzhen isn't dead? You don't have to be happy, Teng Lingzi smiled. This young monk can't hold on much longer. I reckon that he'll turn into blood completely in a year or so and become the essence energy of my blood calabash. There's no need for a year or so. Suzumo's gaze was sharp and murderous as he said slowly, Today, I'll send you to meet Hades. Ha! As though he had heard something extremely amusing, Teng Lingzi said sinisterly, Araki Takashi, don't worry. I'll keep you in my blood calabash as well and let you accompany him. You'll turn into blood and meet Acheron together. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival again. Ever since he became an immortal, he had been writing and accompanying everyone for the Mid-Autumn Festival. It had been 5 years now. He did not know how many book friends who were celebrating alone in foreign lands would send their blessings to him during this festival as well. No matter what, there's still me and an eternity to accompany you for the Mid-Autumn Festival. There's a song that states that companionship is the longest confession of love. I hope that I can continue writing so that I can accompany everyone every Mid-Autumn Festival. I also hope that I'll have everyone's company in the future. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival? End of chapter. Chapter 1427. Young Master, there's no need for you to do it personally. I'll help young master capture Araki Takashi. A conjoint body mighty figure of the Bloodvine race stood out. Teng Lingzi waved it off and smiled. No, I'm going to capture this person personally and keep him in my blood calabash. Araki Takashi, there aren't many people of the same cultivation realm in this world who are worthy of me taking action. Teng Lingzi walked towards Su Zimo with his blood calabash in hand and smiled sinisterly. It's a worthy death for you to die in my hands. Cut the crap. Hand over your life. Su Zimo laughed coldly and charged towards Teng Lingzi in huge strides. But, you want to fight me in melee combat? Teng Lingzi smiled gently. As the young master of the Bloodvine race and a monster incarnate of this generation, he saw through Su Zimo's plans instantly. Among the primordial 9 races, although the Bloodvine race was bloodthirsty, their blood chi and physique were not strong and were far inferior to the Protoss, dragons and other primordial races. They were only stronger than the witch race. If he could force the Bloodvine race into melee combat, Su Zimo was extremely confident that he could suppress Teng Lingzi with ease given Qinglian's true body. Fu, how can it be that easy? Teng Lingzi chuckled and stomped his feet gently into the void. Swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, blood-colored vines that were as thick as arms grew from the void and coiled toward Su Zimo. Before the blood vines arrived, the circular human faces at the top opened their mouths and revealed sharp fangs that shone with a cold glint. With that, at least a few hundred blood vines coiled over with a stench, almost engulfing Su Zimo. Humph! Su Zimo's expression was unchanged and he did not stop in his tracks as he flicked his fingertips gently. Instantly, more than 10 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth. They were extremely sharp and coiled around Su Zimo, crisscrossing in a white blur. The moment the blood vines approached, they were severed by the heaven-slaying sword chi and blood gushed out, dyeing half the sky red. More than 10 heaven-slaying sword chi spiraled and blocked the hundreds of blood vines outside. Heaven-slaying sword art? Teng Lingzi frowned as a trace of fear flashed through the depths of his eyes. In the records of the Bloodvine clan, the 3 major sword techniques were extremely famous even in the upper realm. If the 3 sword arts were combined, the power would be unimaginable. Even the true immortals of the upper realm would have to avoid him. A storm of blood. Teng Lingzi activated his origin spirit, formed a seal, and pointed at Su Zimo from afar. Woo! Instantly, blood-colored figures appeared one after another in midair. Like vengeful ghosts, they surged toward Su Zimo and formed an evil hurricane with a stench. This rain of blood was the inherited secret technique of the Bloodvine race. When this fishy wind blew past, it could even scrape off a cultivator's flesh and blood, leaving nothing behind. In the ancient war, there was once a patriarch of the Bloodvine race who released this secret skill. Wherever the wind passed, only white bones would be left on the ground in an extremely savage manner. Su Zimo channeled his bloodline with a fearless expression when the wind blew. The creation Qinglian was an utmost treasure of the universe and was flawless. Right now, Su Zimo was a humanoid creation Qinglian and was at grade 7. Instantly, the wind was suppressed by Qinglian's bloodline. Countless blood shadows dissipated and turned into a rain of blood that poured down. The rain of blood was extremely evil and contained an extremely terrifying corrosive power. However, the Qinglian was untainted by mud and was the best counter against such filthy and evil things. Su Zimo passed through the rain of blood without being affected or harmed in the slightest. How dare you use such methods to embarrass yourself? Young master of the Bloodvine race? That's all there is to you. Su Zimo sneered and shouted, I'll show you the dermic arts of the human race. Om. Su Zimo chanted in Sanskrit. The damning mantra echoed through the world. This time round, he did not release the demon-subduing seal or fiend suppression seal. Instead, he released the 2 strongest dermic seals of the damning dermic seal. The Great Vajrawheel seal and Great Mount Meru seal. The dermic seals descended. A gigantic Vajrawheel crushed towards Teng Lingzi with a shocking might. Teng Lingzi channeled his bloodline and vanished. A blood vine with 100 vines appeared on the spot and waved its arms, coiling towards the Vajrawheel in midair. Against the damning dermic seal, Teng Lingzi was forced to reveal his true form. Those thick blood vines were Teng Lingzi's flesh and blood and were completely different from the dermic art he conjured initially. They were terrifyingly strong. The 100 blood vines moved at the same time and coiled around the Vajra wheel tightly in the blink of an eye. The Vajra wheel could no longer move. The resplendent Vajra wheel gradually dimmed and eventually sank deep into the vines. Before long, it was corroded and riddled with holes. Rumble! Bang! Right then, a huge shadow shrouded over. A gigantic divine mountain descended. It was the sacred mountain of the Buddhist monasteries, Mount Meru. The dermic seal formed Mount Meru and crushed down towards Teng Lingzi with a boundless might. Swoosh! More than 100 vines tore through the air and coiled towards Mount Meru. However, the moment the vines touched Mount Meru, they were repelled by the sacred power of the sacred mountain and exploded on the spot. Teng Lingzi roared. Not only did his injuries fail to push him back, they even made him ferocious. More and more vines rushed towards Mount Meru. The vines that exploded initially splattered on Mount Meru with their pungent blood, causing the brilliance of the sacred mountain to dim gradually and its power to decrease. The blood vine race was the most bloodthirsty. Their bloodlines were fused with the bloodlines of countless living beings of different races and were the most impure and filthiest. Even some dermic weapons would be crippled if they were accidentally tainted by it. For conjoint body mighty figures, the explosion of the vines would regrow instantly. It was nothing much. However, even the great Mount Meru seal could not withstand the filthy and evil blood gushing out. The fact that Teng Lingzi was able to neutralize the 2 daeming dermic seals was proof that he was rather capable. However, Su Zimo had already closed in while Teng Lingzi was entangled with the 2 daeming dermic seals. Melee combat. Su Zimo wanted to maximize his advantage. When they saw that the other mighty figures of the Bloodvine race did not attack and there was no hint of nervousness on their faces. On the contrary, the eyes of the mighty figures of the Bloodvine race shone with mockery. On the battlefield, when he saw Su Zimo descend, Teng Lingzi reverted to his true form and took root in the ground. He could not move and could only take the attack head-on. More than 100 blood vines tore through the air and whipped towards Su Zimo. Shatter! Su Zimo descended from the skies with the momentum of plowing the heavens beneath his feet, as though he was plowing a ravine in midair. Exclamation point! More than 10 blood vines were crushed instantly with that stomp. Blood spewed out and splattered on Su Zimo's body. Right then, a change happened. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.